SABC News, we report, contextualize and present news and current affairs honestly, fairly and fully. We consider it a duty to provide consistent, relevant, useful and top quality information and analysis. Our mission is to provide credible, accurate and interesting news programming, bringing news into everyone's homes in everyone's languages. Thank you, South Africa, for relying on SABC News for quality news output and for making us your #1 source of information. SABC News, Africa's news leader.
We are Newsroom. Hello and welcome from Johannesburg, here in South Africa once again. My name, of course, Evan Jansen. This show is always live and broadcast from our studios right here in Auckland Park. Don't forget, between 9 and 12 every weekday morning, we're broadcasting live on YouTube through the streaming facility. You can also watch us back on that same facility a little bit later in the day. If there's anything you want to catch up on once again. Today we ask you an interesting question, a question that's constantly on South Africa's lips. Should corporal punishment be brought back into our schools? We've got a teacher that's for it, we've got some against it, and we'll get a response from the Department of Basic Education a little bit later. So all the stakeholders and role players will give us their view on this, and then we would like you to tell us what you think. Should corporal punishment be brought back into schools here in South Africa? That's our question for the day. That's what we're going to look at. But first up, the morning's news with Elvis Presley.
Thank you, Evan. Let's get right into it. Your top stories for this hour. The United Nations Advisory Board on Water and Sanitation is calling for a new intergovernmental panel within the UN to resolve emerging water challenges around the globe. The Minister for International Relations, Maitano Mashabane, says she does not want South Africa to be forced to choose between membership of the International Criminal Court and Pan-African commitments. And New York City Mayor Bill de Blasio says there is no threat against New York City, despite a newly released ISIS video suggesting that the city is a potential target of attacks such as those in Paris. Those are all your headlines. But first, let's find out from Kendall Makamate what's happening on the sports field. A very good morning to you, Kendall.
Good morning to you, Elvis, and thanks very much for that. And a hearty good morning to you at home. This is what we've got for you in the sports today. Suspended FIFA President Sepp Blatter and European soccer head Michel Platini have lost their appeals against their provisional 90-day bans by FIFA.
I think they can be if they wish to be.
Former WADA President Dick Pound says the way is open for Russia to solve its doping problems ahead of the Rio 2016 Olympic Games. This, as Richie McCaw brings to an end a glittering 14-year career and mourns the passing of superstar Jonah Lomu. And that's what we've got for you in the sports, around about 10:20 or so. Make sure you stick around for that. Back to you, Elvis.
Thank you, Kendall. Let's start off with our top story this morning. The United Nations Advisory Board on Water and Sanitation is calling for a new intergovernmental panel within the UN to resolve emerging water challenges around the globe. Releasing a report in New York, the board warned that the current water and sanitation infrastructure requires a major overhaul if the world is to meet the post-2015 objectives.
The world faces a growing water crisis, with increasing numbers of people living under water stress, worsening flood and drought catastrophes, while the resource itself is being badly managed.
Every day, a woman somewhere has to walk further to get water. Every day, a diesel pump has to go down further to pull the water up from underneath. Every day, cities have to go further away. Every day, more rivers have to be captured and put into reservoirs to reach the water. Every day, more developments take place in the urban areas, and some of them contribute more sewage. How on earth do you convey the emerging drama created by all of these measures?
The report calls for greater awareness to be given to issues of water and sanitation, for quality drinking water to be better managed, including monitoring and reporting, for sanitation to be brought into the mainstream, and for better financing for the sector, among others. And it wants the UN system to take the lead.
It is time to consider an architecture at the global level that is fit for purpose. The key elements of a global thematic architecture organized within and around the UN are typically an intergovernmental platform that meets regularly on the matter to ensure a coordinated leadership by governments.
This timely report comes at a time when many regions, be that from California on the United States West Coast to South Africa at the tip of Africa, that are encountering severe droughts, with millions facing water shortages in the coming months. The point this report is trying to highlight is that there needs to be a broader global coordination around water and sanitation issues to ensure greater mitigation and water security in the years ahead. Shervin Brycepease, SABC News, New York.
Back in KwaZulu-Natal, Premier Senzo Mchunu has called on communities not to use violence to raise their concerns in areas hard hit by the prolonged drought. The province will join the Free State in implementing water shedding as of next week. It has set aside an additional 114 million rand for drought relief.
Rivers and dams have dried up, boreholes are empty, as the drought ravages large parts of KwaZulu-Natal. Hardest hit are northern parts of the province. So far, the damage there is estimated at almost R500 million. Thousands of livestock have died and hectares of crops destroyed.
Provincial government has had to augment that resource to make sure that we are almost providing adequate intervention or reasonable interventions on the issue of scarcity or shortage of water.
The government admits the magnitude of the drought far exceeds the resources available. With the little funds now available, it plans to deliver water tanks to communities and drill more boreholes.
We are providing a subsidy and to provide for a 3-month supply, targeting all our farmers on a sliding scale, and with the subsistence farmers receiving 100% subsidy.
The intermittent rain in parts of KZN has done very little to improve the situation. Water restrictions remain in place in most areas, and calls are being made for communities to use water sparingly. Ayanda Mhlongo, SABC News, Jozini.
The Minister for International Relations, Maite Mashabane, says she does not want South Africa to be forced to choose between membership of the International Criminal Court, the ICC, and Pan-African commitments. Mashabane added that if the ICC continues in this direction, it will crumble.
As the International Criminal Court holds the annual meetings of its political members, the South African Minister for International Relations, Maite Mashabane, pushed for more respect from the court for African countries. South Africa has been at loggerheads with the ICC since the court ordered an explanation about why authorities didn't hand over indicted Sudanese President Omar al-Bashir when he visited an AU summit in Johannesburg. The minister has not ruled out the idea that the government is considering leaving the jurisdiction of the ICC.
We don't want to ever, as South Africa, after having been part of the formation and the drafters of the Rome Statutes, to ever be asked to choose between ICC and our Pan-African agenda. We think that would be asking for too much.
Is that to say that you would choose the Pan-African agenda?
I just want to repeat what I said, because this is what I've been saying the whole day. We do not want to ever be put in a situation where we must choose.
South Africa would be the first country to withdraw from the court if it did so, but some observers are questioning the government's persistence in this matter.
If I were South Africans, I would be asking very difficult questions. I would be saying there's no dog in this fight for South Africa, and South Africa needs to withdraw from this space and mind domestic issues. And I suspect South Africans have got many domestic issues that they need to be talking about at this time.
Meetings in The Hague will continue for a number of days yet, and the other members of the ICC will be trying to persuade South Africa to remain signed up to the court.
The minister continued to refuse to state concretely whether South Africa is prepared to leave the International Criminal Court, but it does seem that it could become a realistic prospect. Jack Parrick, SABC News, The Hague.
New York City authorities say there is no specific and credible threat against the city. Now, this despite a newly released ISIS video suggesting America's most populous city is a potential target of attacks such as those in Paris, in France.
The 6-minute clip shows a brief glimpse of Times Square, a midtown Manhattan crossroads, popular with tourists, and a suicide bomber holding what appears to be a trigger. The IS video includes a scene that appears to show a suicide bomber making preparations and zipping up a jacket. However, New York Mayor Bill de Blasio says residents should continue their life as there is nothing to be feared.
We understand it is the goal of terrorists to intimidate and disrupt our democratic society. We will not submit to their wishes. The people of New York City, as you can see right now, are going about their business even at this late hour. I want to encourage all New Yorkers to continue to go about their business normally. It's important to note that there is no credible and specific threat against New York City. NYPD has been working very, very closely with the FBI and our other federal partners, and I again repeat, there is no specific and credible threat against New York City.
Meanwhile, French authorities say human remains found on the rubble of a flat where a standoff took place yesterday in Paris between police and suspects of last week Friday terror attacks are yet to be identified. Paris prosecutor François Molins says the fate of the suspected organizer of the Friday's attack remains unknown.
Meanwhile, in Nigeria, on the African continent, 2 female suicide bombers have blown themselves up at a mobile market in the city of Kano. 14 people were killed and more than 100 others wounded. The attack comes a day after a blast in the northeastern city of Yola, killing 32 and injuring 80. The assault bear the hallmarks of Boko Haram. It suggests that the militant group is stepping up its operations. Now, today we focus on a very special topic, and that's education. And Evan Janssen has got a very special question for you this morning. Evan?
Yeah, Elvis, it's an interesting one. They say, spare the rod and you spoil a child. That is the context that we are, well, conversing with you today. The question of the day today is one that's, well, been on the periphery of South African society for quite a few years. Here it is. It says, should corporal punishment be brought back into schools? It's a question that we'd love you to interact with us. We know that all South Africans have a point of view of it, and if you live in the rest of the continent, what are your views on it? You can tell us at SABC Newsroom what you think about corporal punishment in schools. Now, Elvis Preslin is well, with a man that has a very specific view with regards to corporal punishment in schools. Elvis, take it away.
Thank you, Eben. As you know, we're speaking about security in schools. We talk about discipline in schools, and that is our interview now. The latest survey by Stats SA released last year shows that 13.5% of children attending school in South Africa still endured corporal punishment, although it has been outlawed. Eastern Cape and KwaZulu-Natal topped the list with 21% each for children who attended schools where they experienced corporal punishment, which, as you know, was banned in the education system in 1996. Only the Western Cape and Gauteng seem to be provinces where this kind of behavior is very low. The persistence of corporal punishment, though, has often been attributed to a lack of support for the ban among the teachers. But teachers are also under threat from the pupils. In 2013, as you can recall, the South African Democratic Teachers Union, SATU, called for violence against teachers to end. That was after a pupil from Glen Vista High School in South Johannesburg assaulted a teacher. Now, to look at this phenomenon of discipline in schools, we are joined by an ex-teacher and disciplinarian, Joe van Wyk. A very good morning to you, sir, and welcome.
Good morning, Elvis.
Now, you have been a teacher in the 70s and 80s, and did you find that the schooling methods since then has changed dramatically?
I would say dramatically so, yes.
Why?
Well, of course, it's the times have changed definitely, and also the approach that it has moved from your traditional teaching methodologies to your outcomes-based education, which is also a major change in itself. And with that, of course, there were the challenges that came along with it.
Yes. Now, talking about that methods, but methods relating to discipline, has that also changed?
Sadly and unfortunately so, I must say as an ex-teacher that discipline has fallen along the wayside.
Now, what methods did you use when you were a teacher in terms of disciplining, especially rowdy and belligerent children and pupils?
Well, Elvis, I would say I used corporal punishment. Not always, very selectively, and I think you are evidence of that, of course, for the information of people that you were in my class, my high school class, from standard 6 to matric. And I think you got a fair number of whackings from me.
Yes. Now, as you can see, some of the visuals that we see currently there, a pupil attacking a teacher. Now, in your day, that was never the case. It would have never happened.
Most certainly. It never happened. In my almost 27 years of teaching, it never ever occurred that a child challenged my authority as a teacher.
And why was that, do you think?
I would think that firstly there was a definite framework of discipline. The child knew in which discipline or framework of discipline he had to operate, as well as the teachers too.
Now, do you believe that the abolition of corporal punishment, which was in 1996, made it more difficult for teachers to control rowdy students?
In a way, I would say not an unequivocal no or an unequivocal yes, but I would say, yeah, in a way, the abolishment of corporal punishment has contributed to the demise of discipline in schools.
Are you still a proponent of corporal punishment, even up to today in 2015? That was after the abolishment, or would you now, looking back, perhaps go for a more soft approach, which is now currently dictated by the school system?
Once again, I would say not an unequivocal yes. Yes, I am a proponent of corporal punishment, but under very strict and very controlled conditions.
Did this violent method of discipline had any negative effects that you've seen in the former students that you had?
No, certainly not. In fact, I would say from an empirical experience, I would say it actually contributed to many a student, many of my learners, and I'm speaking on behalf, I would say, and speaking on behalf of my compatriots, that the pupils and the students who went through our hands, that's in the 70s, the 80s, and well into the 90s, they went on to become well-rounded, people who are well-rounded and who are disciplined in their lookout and who have become citizens of a high level in many instances.
Now, some would argue that corporal punishment is a very violent nature, and that corporal punishment has scarred some of the pupils and for life even, and made them very violent adults. Would you concur with that type of statement?
It is unfortunately so that within society you will always have your extremes. Also in the teaching profession, you always had those that went to the utmost and using corporal punishment as a form of retribution and as a form of harsh punishment. But luckily I can say they were in the minority. Generally it was people who approached, teachers who approached it in a very adult way.
Now, you've mentioned me as one of your examples, but what other examples do you have of well-rounded individuals that hasn't turned out to be violent individuals?
Well, there are a few I can think of. For instance, the erstwhile CEO of Eskom, Brian Daumers. I had him for mathematics in standard 7 and 8. There's the erstwhile president of South African Rugby Union, Brian van Rooyen, who was one of my pupils, and so many others who had went on to become pastors and ministers, and others became university lecturers. And as I say, not only me, but I mean the people who were in my error as educators.
Now, I can attest that I'm still not crying in my heart after the beatings you gave us, but your advice to teachers out there today and to the current crop of teachers that is facing this onslaught from pupils in relation to pupil discipline, what would you advise?
I would say that actually the problem goes very deeper in the societal aspects. And I would say the first thing is teachers must equip them to become emotionally intelligent. Because from the teacher's point of view, or from my personal point of view, there's not enough respect from the teacher to the child. The second problem, of course, is that many a parent has abdicated their responsibility and they've placed it squarely on the teacher and the school. So I would advise that there has to be a complete paradigm shift. And it has to go very deep, not only from the teacher's side, but from society as a whole.
And bring back the cane.
Under very controlled circumstances, I would say yes. But remember, Elvis, corporal punishment should be under due process. You just can't, for the first transgression, grab the cane or the strap and beat the child. No. That will be abuse. But the child must understand, firstly, why he or she is getting a hiding. The second thing is, I would say, if one takes it very holistically, as human beings, we are there as survival. We are in a survival mode. And survival is underpinned by fear. I know there will be those that might attack me on this, but I would say if you start using that fear, the child's fear for pain, then you're actually conditioning him in a very structured and a proper way.
Mr. Joe van Wyk, thank you so much for your time and joining us here in studio.
Thank you very much.
That was an ex-teacher and disciplinarian, Joe van Wyk, with his take on how to discipline unruly pupils. But right now, Eben is going to take that further. Joining us in the discussion, you can do so on our question that we posed to you. Do you think that we should bring back corporal punishment in our schools? That's our question to you. Over to you, Eben.
Yeah, thank you very much. That's the question of the day. Should corporal punishment be brought back into schools here in South Africa is a question we ask you. But in general, across the continent, what do you think? Tell us what you think. Now, we have some live tweets been coming in. I understand that you guys are quite passionate about this. Before we take those tweets, let's look at the other factor that plays into discipline in schools. It's called safety at schools. And safety at schools around the country remains a concern, despite the Education Department's promise to step up security measures. Earlier this month, a 12-year-old pupil was arrested for allegedly stabbing to death two fellow pupils, both aged 15, from the Vulindlela Primary School in Ozizweni near Newcastle in KwaZulu-Natal. The study into school violence by the Centre for Justice and Crime Prevention found an increase in school violence. The study found that 22.3% of high school pupils had been subjected to some form of violence. Another study conducted by the National School Violence Study also revealed that learners were perpetrators of 90% of the violence that happens in schools, whether against other learners or teachers. Now, the Department of Basic Education is planning to hold a schools safety summit within the next year, which will look at how to deal with corporal punishment at schools, amongst other things. Now, we'll go to Cape Town, where Patrick Burton, who's the Executive Director of the Centre for Justice and Crime Prevention, joins us this morning. Good morning to you, Patrick. Thank you for joining us.
Morning. Thank you very much. Good to be here.
Patrick, I'd like to start with our question of the day. We have asked all our viewers the question of the day today. The question is a simple one. You've done the studies. Should corporal punishment be brought back into schools here in South Africa?
Well, I've got a very categorical, simple response, which is no. And, I think to draw the relationship between the abolishment of corporal punishment and other levels of school violence, I think is quite simplistic. Unlike the Statistics South Africa survey that you quoted earlier, which I think places corporal punishment at around 13.5%, certainly our study shows that around 49-50% of children are still experiencing corporal punishment, and the majority of surveys out there are showing anything between 45 to 70% of learners still experiencing corporal punishment. That's despite the ban on that form of discipline. So I think it really is it's a bit of a leap to say, well, the abolishment of corporal punishment is leading to other forms of violence within schools, simply because corporal punishment practically is still happening, and it's happening to more children than it's not happening to. I think the fact that we're also debating this when South Africa is signatory to a number of international instruments and treaties that recognize that corporal punishment is a form of physical violence against the child, and that we've undertaken to abolish it. The Minister of Social Development made it very clear that she's committed to abolishing corporal punishment in the home. I think, really the fact we're having this conversation is slightly worrying at this point in time. And I'm happy to chat about any of the evidence, but international evidence from a range of different countries shows the short, medium, and long-term negative outcomes of inflicting corporal punishment, physical punishment on children of different ages.
What then do the numbers or the studies, what does it show with regards to the escalation of security issues and the escalation of violence within school precincts around South Africa?
Well, when we're talking about escalation, it's what we've seen in terms of the general levels of school violence. It's actually much more. It's a statistically insignificant change, actually, between 2008, which is when the first national school violence study was conducted, and 2012. And we've seen sort of marginal increases of anything between 0.5 and 2%, depending on the types of violence. So we're not really seeing an escalation, but we do have unacceptably high levels of school violence. And I think that's an important differentiation to make, because that's also going to determine how we respond and making sure that we have appropriate policies and interventions in place to deal with it in the long term.
Now, your study, the Center for Justice and Crime Prevention, found an increase. You say a slight one. The study says 22.2% of high school pupils had been subjected to some form of violence. Now, that's more than 1 in 5 pupils subjected to violence, according to your study. Surely that's a concern.
It is absolutely a concern. Ultimately, even though we focus on numbers, if we were having 5, 10, 15, 20 individuals experiencing school violence, violence at schools, that's still concerning. But 1 in 5 absolutely is. And, for us, it's really important that we contextualize what's happening in schools within broader exposure to violence, broader violence in communities and in homes. And I think what we're seeing in schools really is a reflection of children's lives and South Africans' lives more broadly. And we're going to have to start addressing that. We're going to have to start addressing what's happening in schools as part of a broader strategy to address the levels of violence that we see in South African communities.
What about the psychological scars of this perpetual cycle of violence in our schools?
Yeah. Well, I think it's a very good question, and they're looking at the long-term outcomes. Experience of violence has been shown conclusively, experienced as a child, to impact on the relationships that children form. It can impact, depending on the age, on their cognitive development. It can impact on educational outcomes. And so what it really does is it feeds into all sorts of negative psychological, health, economic outcomes in the long term. And so really it's important that we invest in getting this right, both at schools and I think generally more broadly violence against and within childhood, because that really is just going to keep feeding the cycles that we see. It's going to keep feeding violence in the homes as well. And what's interesting is that when we think about corporal punishment, there have been a number of studies in countries like Vietnam, Ethiopia, as well as Canada and the UK, which show that experience of corporal punishment and harsh physical punishment is also related to forms of intimate partner violence in the homes, with attitudes that condone corporal punishment and other forms of harsh discipline, often reflected in attitudes towards the way that violence is played out between individuals within home settings. So we have to start intervening and look at what the evidence says works in the interventions that we adopt.
Patrick, thank you very much for joining us. Fly from Cape Town. Patrick Burton is the Executive Director of the Centre for Justice and Crime Prevention. He says corporal punishment is not an option. We need interventions, other interventions. What those are, we'll explore as we continue with the show. Of course, corporal punishment, we now know, is only one of the issues that students face daily across the country here in South Africa. In line with the South African Constitution, corporal punishment was abolished by the Department of Education. The department has many times lamented teachers who continue to practice corporal punishment in schools, and some teachers have found themselves in hot water because of it. It's something that you at home are very passionate about. We've got live tweets coming in this morning as you respond to our question. Yeah, Darling Lungwane says, at SABC Newsroom, yes, the kids are now out of control. The only solution can be corporal. Spare the rod, spoil the child. That is what Darling says. Mklantla talks about at SABC Newsroom, yes, we live in a time where children do as they please. This one from Mklantla. There we have Ntiso says at SABC Newsroom, never that one, they must never think about it. Never, she says, talking about corporal punishment. Never must it be brought back. Then Pumi Plati talks about at SABC Newsroom. Yes, presently there is no fear of consequences right now for the kids. That's in response to our question of the day that's going up. We're asking you, should corporal punishment be brought back into schools here in South Africa? We understand it's a very emotive subject. That's why we've got it up for you today. Should corporal punishment be brought back into schools? Some people say yes, others say no. We've had a pro and an against thus far in the show. Next, we're going to talk to Satu when Elvis comes back after a break. But before that, let's just take a look at some of the other news. Our tweet of the day, of course, comes from Khalid Bey, and it's captioned, tragic photos from the Nigeria attack, 32 killed, far more injured. These are some of the other stories in the news today around the continent, around the world. Now let's move on and take a look at the front pages from around the globe. We start in Europe, where the Times reports that police foiled terrorist attacks on Paris's business district and airport yesterday. That left 8 people arrested and 2 dead after a dawn raid in the French capital, during which Europe's first female bomber blew herself up. Then we move to Israel, where the Jerusalem Post reports that Israel will continue to defend its interests in Syria. Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu told the 4th annual Jerusalem Post diplomatic conference yesterday, in advance of his scheduled meeting in Paris later this month with Russian President Vladimir Putin. Then, finally, in Nigeria, the Vanguard reports that the federal government has submitted a supplementary appropriation bill of more than 465 billion naira, along with a request to borrow a further 2.1 trillion naira for the financial year 2015. That's ending in 6 weeks' time. Yes, the country is under pressure because of the plummeting oil price around the world. Currently, it sits under $50 a barrel and is having a massive effect on the economy of Nigeria and some other West African nations. Let's just quickly shift our focus to here in South Africa. There you have it. We start in Durban, where the great-granddaughter of human rights icon Mahatma Gandhi, 45-year-old Ashish Lata Ramgoban, is expected to appear in the Durban Magistrates Court on charges of theft, fraud and forgery. He was released on 50,000 rand bail last month, allegedly swindled more than 11 million rand from 2 businessmen. Then, still in Durban, the 32-year-old man serving 18 years for rape is trying to persuade the Pietermaritzburg court to grant him leave to appeal. He will present to the court new evidence today, which he claims will exonerate him. He was sentenced for raping a 6-year-old more than 5 years ago. Then in Kimberley, 5 suspects are expected to appear in the magistrates court there on a charge of armed robbery following a cash-in-transit heist. More than 10 suspects fled the scene with an undisclosed amount of cash. Now, our question of the day, of course, should corporal punishment be abolished? We ask you this question. We want you to respond to it. We've had pro and we've had against. We want you to give us your views. After the break, Elvis is going to continue this theme, and he's going to speak to the South African Democratic Teachers Union about their views on security in schools, and then our question of the day, corporal punishment. Keep it coming. We love your views. We've got a whole lot of them coming in. We'll run it through the fabric of the show today as we can continue with Newsroom here on SABC News.
The road to greatness is not an easy one. It's rough, tough, and full of barriers. And there's only one way to master it. Never, ever stop. Dauntless. The all-new Audi Q7.
At Philips, we wake up every morning and ask, how can innovation make a difference to you? How can thousands of LEDs bring the pyramids to life and light up hearts? How can an air fryer make delicious traditional meals with up to 80% less fat? How can portable ultrasound be part of a program to help lower infant mortality in Uganda? Because the only innovation that really matters is innovation that matters to you. Innovation and you. Philips.
Now, we continue with our theme around education this morning and discipline in schools. Now, it's a known secret, or open secret, that corporal punishment is still very rife in our schools. Despite it being abolished 18 years ago, the South African Council for Educators this week received 700 cases against teachers, and at the end of those 650 cases processed, 252 of them had to do with corporal punishment. Earlier this year, the Congress of South African Students, COSAS, they called on learners to physically assault teachers that carry out corporal punishment, a move which was largely criticized by the education stakeholders. Now, joining us in studio is Namusa Thembi, who is a media officer for the South African Democratic Teachers Union. A very good morning to you, Namusa, and welcome.
Good morning.
First and foremostly, what is SADTU's stance on corporal punishment?
SADTU's stance on corporal punishment is that it is illegal. We can never allow it. We can never allow teachers to mete out corporal punishment on the learners, and we can also not allow any kind of violence to be meted on teachers by the learner or anybody. Violence begets violence. It doesn't solve any problem. Instead, it ensures that violence, it sustains violence, and violence is illegal.
Now, teachers often feel that their hands are tied, that they can't do anything because of these unruly students. And we've even seen some video footage, if we can see some of those that we've shown earlier on YouTube and so forth, where teachers are being physically assaulted by the pupils. In that type of incident, what can a teacher do?
Yes, teachers are physically violated by the learners and also emotionally violated by the learners. You find that teachers are sworn at, you know. At the moment, there's very little that teachers can do. It's illegal. A teacher can report the matter. A learner can be suspended, but you find that there's very little that a teacher can do. But at the same time, we always say to the teachers, it's not that when violence is meted on them, then they should retaliate and use violence. We are in a human rights culture where we have to observe the right of the learners, and the learners should also respect the right of the teachers. We have called for more training on the teachers as to how they can be trained to manage better bullying and violence in schools. Because when in 96, when they abolished corporal punishment, very little was done to train the teachers as to what is it that they can do in cases of violence in order to instill discipline in schools. And then you'll find that whenever they come across violence, the easiest option, it's an option they've been used to, it's an option they were brought up with, they would tend to go back to using that violence again.
Now, what is being done to retrain or train teachers to actually take care of these unruly students in a disciplined manner?
Very little is being done. That's why we've put proposals to government to say, please do train teachers, do train the learners. Please look at this. And we've also asked for psychosocial services in our schools, because the issue of discipline involves a lot of factors that involve where the learner comes from. You'll find that this behavior may also come from where the learner comes from, the values that they are taught in their homes, what is happening in their home environment, and it impacts on the school. And then we said we would like to see psychosocial services in our schools in order to assist these learners.
But what other alternatives are there really for the teachers out there if they are confronted by a belligerent student?
There are very few alternatives, because if you mete out violence, it's a crime. So
what do you do?
In schools, we have now these safety policies where there must be agreements as to what is it, when on how to discipline learners, what learners need to observe, what learners need to do. But we find that even with those policies, where there are agreements as to what is it that needs to be done in case there is conflict between the learner and the parent and the teacher, but you find that doesn't follow through, in that the issue of discipline comes from outside. If a child comes in, with not disciplined enough, it is hard for you as a teacher to instill that discipline. So we always say that the issue of disciplining children shouldn't only lie with the teacher, but it's a community issue, is a parental issue. Parents should be involved. When learners transgress, parents are asked to come to schools, but you find that parents sometimes do not want to come to look into this matter, because a teacher cannot do anything without the parent being there.
Now, you heard our former ex-teacher sitting here earlier says that, yes, corporal punishment is a method of violence, but if you control it and you utilize it against a student, it can be implemented properly. There are some teachers and even some parents that are calling for the cane to be brought back. What is SATU's stance?
We cannot allow for that to come in, because violence in any... It's illegal. It's illegal. It cannot be condoned, and you cannot. How do you measure that it is? It can be implemented. It is totally illegal.
Thank you so much for your time, Nomusa, for joining us here in studio. Now, that was Nomusa Tebi, the SATU spokesperson, in studio here with us, chatting to you about our theme for the day. And the question that we pose to you, you will see it right now on screen. What do you think? Should we bring back the cane? The question of the day, should corporal punishment be brought back into our schools? We'll take a short break and we'll be right back after that, and Eben Janssen will explore that question further.
The internet has been found to be a tool used by militant groups when recruiting members. This has forced governments to create tighter internet laws. Technology has also been used to call for social change, as was the case with the abducted Nigerian girls.
The people on social media are some of the society's most influential. If they get an issue started, you're likely to have that issue become a national issue.
And on Network, we tell you about this serious side of technology, but we have fun too with gadgets, games and cars. That's Network every Sunday at 19:30, only on SABC News.
Welcome back. You're still with Newsroom. Of course, today we've asked you quite an emotive question. There's been lots of responses to it. Should corporal punishment be brought back into schools here in South Africa? We've had those for, we've had those against it. We've had the Teachers Union. But the final word today belongs to the Department of Basic Education here in South Africa. And we are joined by the spokesperson, Elijah Mhlanga. Very good morning to you, Elijah. Thanks for joining us.
Morning. Thank you.
I'm very impressed that you're prepared to come in and take this kind of thing head on, right on the chin, without flinching, because it's a question that's doing the rounds in South Africa quite a bit. Should corporal punishment be brought back into the schools? What's your answer to the parents and to the teachers who say yes?
It's a difficult one because we understand that there's a big problem when it comes to discipline in our schools, and something needs to be done. But what needs to be done? I think as a nation we need to have a dialogue about it, because our children don't behave in the way that some of us used to do, maybe because it was corporal punishment that was in place in our schools, but things have changed as well. We need new ways of discipline in our classrooms, but right now things are very, very bad, and our education is disrupted as a result of that, because learners are not sure anymore whether they're safe when they go to schools. Our teachers are not sure anymore. Some are resigning, and some even get fired just for administering corporal punishment. But it's not a good thing. I mean, you can take action against them, but it's not what you want, because you are losing teachers that are qualified, that are experienced, and they lose their jobs on something that's got nothing to do with the competence of their work.
Yeah, it puts a real strain on the entire education process that's so important for South Africa. But I want to talk to you about the use of corporal punishment that still continues. You talk about teachers losing their jobs, but what do the numbers say? Are you concerned that it is becoming more rife, or that it is still rife?
Yeah, it comes as a huge concern to us, because the story is that it's not allowed, but yet it happens. The question is why. And we find that teachers are frustrated in our classrooms. They don't know what to do. In some cases, they have to defend themselves against young people who are bringing weapons to schools. And some of them use these weapons in the classroom, which threatens other learners as well. And as a department, the burden is on us to deal with these issues. And it means that we need to take action against the learners that are bringing weapons. But in doing so, you need a parent's involvement. Some of them don't have parents, and they just grow up without parental guidance. And that's the other social issue that we really need to deal with. But we also need to protect our teachers as well, for them to be able to continue to teach. But some of them, in the process of teaching inside the classroom, you find that the learner will stand on top of a table and just shout profanities at them. The question is, how then do you handle that type of situation? So it's a very difficult one. And I think that before people make all sorts of accusations against anyone, you need to think thoroughly about it yourself and as an individual, and say, what is it that you can do?
Well, I want to talk to you about the role of the parents, because that's probably the most important thing within this dynamic. But the question now remains firstly about safety, and it's something that you at the department, you've isolated safety, not just of teachers, students and the like, and external forces coming onto school grounds and so forth is a problem. You've got a summit that you're planning for within the next a quarter or 6 months, I think. What's the thinking behind the summit that's going on?
You know, in March last year, we had a discipline summit where we brought students, we brought experts in this area of work, we brought other stakeholders in the education sector to talk about discipline in our schools. there were many varying views, and you know, even there were calls for corporal punishment to be brought back, but the law is against it. So we felt that we needed to have a follow-up, a dialogue, but this time make it broader and invite even international experts to tell us how they are doing it in other countries. So that's really what we want to do. And I'm glad that we're even having this conversation today, because it's part and parcel of that build-up to that big summit, which we must have. All of us must talk about this as a nation, because it is our learners that go to schools. And if someone wants to be like Eben Jansen, and you're still committing some kind of criminal activity or some violent, showing some violent behavior in a classroom, how are you going to get there? Because chances are that you'll either get jailed or your education will be derailed in some form or shape. So we really need positive role models, people that will go and talk to young people to say to them, for you to be up there, one day you want to be a CEO, you want to be president, for you to be up there, you need to have shown good conduct and behavior and respect for other people.
I have to, on that note, say, Elijah, I wasn't a model student. I was a little bit naughty in school, but back then it was a little bit easier, I think, to guide somebody like me who, you know, my excuse was that, you know, I was maybe there was a little bit more going on with me. But in conclusion, like everything in schools, it comes back to what's happening at home.
Yes.
The role of the parents. In South Africa, I think our crisis with schooling is as much a crisis with parenting, isn't it?
Absolutely. That's why we cannot do this ourselves as a Department of Basic Education. That's why we work with the Department of Social Development, because some of these challenges are beyond the classroom. They come from the streets, they come from the society, and are important into the school. So what we see in the school environment is a reflection of what is taking place in society. So it means that our churches need to play their role, our traditional leaders need to play their role, NGOs, community-based organizations, our leaders, everyone. We all need to say the same thing for the young people to begin to internalize this message that criminal behavior or showing violent behavior anyway is not going to assist you. In fact, your future depends on how you conduct yourself right now, because if you spend time on other things other than your books, then your future is not going to be as bright as you would like it to be. So it's very important that as a nation we teach our children what they need to do for them to be able to.
And we come to terms with that. Elijah, thank you very much for coming through. Elijah Mhlanga is the spokesperson for the Basic Education Department here in South Africa. And he says we all need to chip in. We must stop pointing fingers around this issue with the discipline and safety problems we have in our schools. It happens in the parental home. It happens in our community centers. It happens in every sphere of our society. That is where we need to be role models, and we need to understand that safety and discipline is paramount. Thank you very much for joining us today. Elijah is always prepared to come in and answer the tough questions that we always tend to ask the Basic Education Department. But we are all in this together. We all need to make a difference. Our question of the day continues. We'll keep on running this throughout the day. Should corporal punishment be brought back into the schools? At the moment, it is against the law. Let's not forget that. It is against the law, so it's not allowed. It's happening in schools around the country. What do you think about this? We've got a lot of live tweets been coming in. We'll look at those a little bit later in the day as we continue. Of course, a big story that's been going on, it's kind of hit New Zealand like a freight train, is the retirement of All Black captain Richie McCaw. He announced his retirement less than a day after legendary rugby player Jonah Lomu passed away. Yes, it's been a tough 24 hours for New Zealand rugby. Probably their two greatest players of the modern era, Richie McCaw and Jonah Lomu, are no longer going to be putting on the black jersey in the case of McCaw. Of course, in the case of Jonah Lomu, the legend is no more. Yeah, some of the tweets, of course. Rugby also says Richie McCaw has retired. Like him, loathing, simply the world's most successful captain. You should put there ever behind that as well. Rosalind says, Richie McCaw, what a legend and a mighty warrior. However, I'm still a Wallabies fan. Yeah, nobody's perfect, Rosalind. Phil says, Richie McCaw retiring and taking up frost fighting in Marlborough, now known locally as Richie McThaw. Frosty boy. Yeah, sense of humour that is. Then Kim talks about at rugby's greatest legend, Richie McCaw. The world of rugby will be easier. Years to the king. Happy retirement, Mr. McCaw. There you have the picture. The first day I put on the jersey, I just didn't want to let it down. I wanted to add to the legacy of what was 100-odd years. Yes, the mighty number 7, carried by the greatest captain of all time. Now, a quick look at what's happening on Newsroom Facebook page before we take a look at the weather. Hundreds of subsistence farmers in the northwest province are selling off their stock to counter the effects of drought. Western and central parts of the province have seen thousands of livestock dying due to a lack of water and feed. Then, Chad's National Assembly extended a state of emergency in the Western Lake Chad region by 4 months following a double attack by Boko Haram militants that killed more people there. And there is no specific incredible threat against the city of New York, despite a newly released IS video suggesting America's most popular city is a potential target for such attacks as those we saw in Paris. Now, you can go to our Facebook page, put in Newsroom, we pop up, like the page. We love your work. We'll send you all the latest news in there. Time now for a weather update with Tsietse Monare, who's been doing the rain dance and it's been working.
Hi there, welcome from the weather desk. So let's have a look if we're getting any more rain towards the central part of South Africa. So towards the northeastern regions, you can see this blue shade here, indicating possibilities of some isolated as well as scattered thunder showers, particularly towards the northwest province, some parts of Limpopo, stretching to Gauteng as well as over the Free State province. But then clear skies are expected for much of the southern and the western interior, going all the way towards the northwestern parts into some parts of Namibia. And also do look out for possibilities of veld fires, which could lead to dry condition, also really hot weather. And then tomorrow, there's a bit of a change. We're expecting rain now towards the western regions because of a cold front that's coming in just overnight. So that will bring some isolated showers there, and also cool down temperatures along those parts because it has been quite hot. Places such as Sutherland and Calvinia into those lower and mid-30s. So let's have a look at it. So there's orange shade here indicating really hot conditions, just about 37 towards Upington, 24 for Cape Town, still looking a bit cooler there. And with the cold front coming in, temperatures will drop even further along those parts. And Gaborone, also much cooler, 27. Possibilities of thunderstorms also expected there, which is good news. We need the rain to come through. Some parts of Madagascar, Antananarivo, is expected to be slightly warmer, temperatures as high as 29 degrees. 30s are expected towards Lusaka as well as over the northern and the central parts. And over the tropics, again, really good news is that there's lots of rain that we're expecting along these parts. You can see the dark shade of blue here, indicating possibilities of some thunderstorms along those regions. Clear conditions are expected along the coastal parts in towards Tanzania. But along the western regions, do expect rain as well, becoming a bit more isolated towards the northern parts as it clears up all the way towards the northern regions. And temperatures are also expected to be a lot more cooler along those central parts. And just have a look at these purple shades here, also suggesting really strong chances of rainfall, which could also lead to possibilities of flooding in some areas. But because of the tropics and the forests along those parts, the rain will be retained really well. And it will move along nicely along the ground areas. Kinshasa, around the 33 degrees, 29 for Luanda. Nice and hot weather is expected into Angola, as well as over the northern part of Namibia. If you're going to be in Ochuarongo, in fact, do expect temperatures to be quite high along those parts. But it's going to be quite dry. Not much rainfall is expected along those parts. We're hoping the rain comes through in the next couple of days or so. Dry as usual over the Sahara and much of the northern parts of Africa. A little bit of rain only towards Tripoli, as well as over some parts of Saudi Arabia. Mecca is expected to be a bit drier. Sana'a, well, it's going to be a bit cloudy there, but not much rain is expected for the next couple of hours. You can see even into Friday, it's still going to stay clear and dry along those parts. High pressure cells moving in over Al Jawf, as well as further up north towards Cairo, keeping the skies quite clearer, and also temperatures on the low side, just around at 24 degrees. 21 for Damascus. Yeah, much of Syria is also expected to be a bit warmer today, but a lot cooler for Baghdad. Riyadh is around 31, in fact. A bit of rain also coming in just along Tripoli, as I mentioned earlier on, as well as over Tunis. But again, clear skies are expected right through N'Djamena, going all the way towards Mali, as well as over Nigeria. Lagos, in fact, should expect just some cloud cover along the coastal parts. You know, it's a coastal city there, so maybe a lot of humidity, possibilities of clouds, but not much of a build-up to sustain rainfall. In fact, it's going to remain dry for the next couple of days. and we're seeing some clouds coming in towards Conakry. Temperatures there reaches maximums of around 31 degrees. That's it for the weather for now. Stay tuned, there'll be more later.
It's a shade after 1000 hours Central Africa time on this Thursday, the 19th of November 2015. Jumbo Africa, and a very warm welcome to the second hour. This is Newsroom. I'm Elvis Preston. I'll be with you until 12 o'clock. You have to stay with us as we broadcast live from our Auckland Park studios in Johannesburg, South Africa, to the rest of the African continent. But first, let's take a look at all your news headlines. The United Nations Advisory Board on Water and Sanitation is calling for a new intergovernmental panel within the UN to resolve the emerging water challenges around the globe. Minister for International Relations, Maita Nkwani says she does not want South Africa to be forced to choose between membership of the International Criminal Court and the Pan-African commitments. And New York Mayor Bill de Blasio says there is no threat against New York City, despite a newly released ISIS video suggesting that the city is a potential target of attacks such as those in Paris. Those are all your headlines, but before we go any further, let's find out from Kendall Makamate what's happening in the sports news. A very good morning to you.
Good morning, Elvis, and a hearty good morning to all of our viewers at home as well. This is what we've got for you in the sports today. Suspended FIFA President Sepp Blatter and European soccer head Michel Platini have lost their appeals against their 90-day FIFA bans.
I think they can be if they wish to be.
Former WADA President Dick Pounds says the way is open for Russia to solve its doping problems ahead of the Rio 2016 Olympic Games. This as Richie McCaw brings to an end a glittering 14-year career and mourns the passing of superstar Jonah Lomu. That in a nutshell is what we've got for you in the sports. Make sure you stick around for that 10:20. Back to you, Elvis.
Thank you, Kendall. Let's start off with our top story this morning. President Jacob Zuma is expected to answer oral questions in the National Assembly this afternoon. This will be his last oral reply session in the Assembly for this year. 6 questions will be posed to the President. President Zuma will face a question from the IFP on whether the IEC is still able to maintain its track record of running free and fair elections as promised in 1994. The ACDP wants the President to answer the question on Israel's reaction to the hosting of Hamas by the ANC. The UDM wants the President to give an indication of how the rollout of the ICT connectivity is giving ordinary citizens access to information. 3 of the 6 questions will be asked by the ANC. Follow-up questions will also be asked by political parties during the session. After today, President Zuma's next engagement with the National Assembly is expected to be in February next year during his State of the Nation address. Now, for more on the story, we are joined from our parliamentary studios by our reporter Lukanya Kalata in Cape Town. A very good morning to you, Lukanyo.
Elvis, good morning.
Now, it's going to be a tough oral session expected in Parliament for the President today. Will he be given the chance to finish the session and answer all the questions, you think?
Elvis, we certainly hope so. As you've already pointed out, this will be the last time that the President interacts with members of the National Assembly. So we are expecting that the session will be peaceful, there won't be any disturbances, and that the President will actually get through the answers. The National Assembly is in the process of trying to finalize new rules to try and tighten control of National Assembly sittings, especially based on what has happened in the National Assembly over the last year. So we do expect that there will be, honourable members will be honourable, and that the President will finish his allotted time that he's due to spend in the National Assembly, which is about an hour. 6 questions, as you've pointed out, them spending about 10 minutes on each question. Elvis?
Now, another question that might arise besides the 6 questions is the President's statement that the ANC comes before the country. Will the DA perhaps take the lead in that assault?
Elvis, usually we don't, when the President is in the House, there's usually a set of questions that he is given or that he responds to. And, those are written down, and the Speaker usually has a very, keeps tight control over what questions are asked and what questions aren't. However, the Democratic Alliance obviously may try to sneak it in, especially when it comes to the follow-up questions to certain issues. I mean, I would imagine, for instance, that on the question posed by the ACDP on the matter of Hamas and the ANC, the Democratic Alliance might want to then pose a follow-up question and sneak in that question, during their time. But Elvis, just quickly, one of the questions at least that we also do expect the President to answer is the issue of universities and whether or not, how much the government is trying to secure the autonomy of universities going forward. Obviously, with what has happened in the last few weeks, or last few months rather, when it comes to the Fees Must Fall movement, there's a lot of emphasis and there's a lot of looking as to exactly what is going to happen, especially next year when it comes to universities, and will they keep their autonomy. So it is going to be a very, very interesting session that we are looking out for. And I think, of course, we will be broadcasting it live. Elvis.
Pay back the money is a chant that we've heard before. Any indication that that thorny issue will be highlighted by the EFF today?
Elvis, I would be lying if I said, I know, because what the EFF is very good at is keeping their cards very close to their chest. So they'll, we don't know what they are planning, but I'll tell you this. Throughout the sessions that were held this week, the EFF members in the House were wearing their red overalls inside the National Assembly. Now, that's a sure sign that they are brewing something. So, and they might be in the National Assembly this afternoon in their combat gear, if I can call it that, ready to pose their question, because obviously the EFF still feels to a very large extent that the president has still not answered that question. So we're hoping that it doesn't happen, because obviously if that happens, there's likely to be some disorder within the National Assembly. And I don't think that any of us, neither politicians, neither the media, or South Africans in general, will be interested in the disorder to take place in the National Assembly this afternoon.
Now, it is the final oral question session for the year. If you can just take us back briefly, what were some of the highlights of these sessions in 2015?
Elvis, obviously, every time that the president has been in the House this year, there's been some form of argy-bargy, of clashes between them and the EFF to a very large extent, as well as to the Democratic Alliance. But I think, some of the highlights were, just a few days before the report on Nkandla by the police, when the president came out and, obviously essentially just put the other parties, the opposition parties, in their place, if I can call it that, being very brazen, if I can call it that. And, just a few days later, then the police minister then came out and basically cleared the president of any wrongdoing when it comes to Nkandla. There was earlier in the year when the parties demanded to know when the president will come back and complete the session that was halted by the actions of the EFF last year. Mm-hmm. So there was a lot going on, and we're hoping that today most of the attention will actually be on the questions the president is going to answer. Also, Elvis, if I can just quickly mention, the Democratic Alliance has this week been very upset, saying that when the executive does come to the National Assembly or come to Parliament, they usually aren't very forthcoming with answers. So I would imagine that the DA today would use that opportunity to say, we want answers, we want the right answers, not just the answers that you think we should get. So we will be looking out for that action coming from the Democratic Alliance this afternoon.
Lukhanya, just briefly, what time is that session starting?
The session starts at 2. It is Thursday today, so usually the House sits at 2 on Thursday. And we will be broadcasting it live from the National Assembly right here on SABC.
There you have it. Thank you so much. That's our reporter, Lukhanya Kalata, in our parliamentary studios in Cape Town. We'll carry it live right here on your favourite station on Channel 404. Stay tuned right here. Now let's move on. The United Nations Advisory Board on Water and Sanitation is calling for a new intergovernmental panel within the United Nations to resolve the emerging water challenges around the globe. Releasing a report in New York, the board warned that the current water and sanitation infrastructure requires a major overhaul if the world is to meet the post-2015 objectives.
The world faces a growing water crisis, with increasing numbers of people living under water stress, worsening flood and drought catastrophes, while the resource itself is being badly managed.
Every day, a woman somewhere has to walk further to get water. Every day, a diesel pump has to go down further to pull the water up from underneath. Every day, cities have to go further away. Every day, more rivers have to be captured and put into reservoirs to reach the water. Every day, more developments take place in the urban areas, and some of them contribute more sewage. How on earth do you convey the emerging drama created by all of these measures?
For greater awareness to be given to issues of water and sanitation, for quality drinking water to be better managed, including monitoring and reporting, for sanitation to be brought into the mainstream, and for better financing for the sector, among others. And it wants the UN system to take the lead.
It is time to consider an architecture at the global level that is fit for purpose. The key elements of a global thematic architecture organized within and around the UN are typically an intergovernmental platform that meets regularly on the matter to ensure a coordinated leadership by governments.
The report comes at a time when many regions, be that from California on the United States West Coast to South Africa at the tip of Africa, that are encountering severe droughts, with millions facing water shortages in the coming months. The point this report is trying to highlight is that there needs to be a broader global coordination around water and sanitation issues to ensure greater mitigation and water security in the years ahead. Shervin Brycepease, SABC News, New York.
Debit card fraud is on the rise, and consumers are warned to be extra cautious as we head to the festive season. The South African Banking Risk Information Centre has released the latest banking card fraud figures, showing that between January and September this year, debit card fraud increased by 8.3%. At the same time, credit card fraud dropped significantly by 28.6%.
The banking industry evolves constantly. South African banks are also moving with the times. Previously, consumers could only use credit cards to make certain purchases, particularly online ones. But now, consumers are able to use debit cards to make them. This change has been accompanied by unintended consequences. Criminals are now targeting debit cards to steal your money.
The modus operandi is actually shifted. Banks have now made debit card EMV compliant. In other words, it also has a chip on the debit cards. So perpetrators are looking for other ways in which they can compromise these cards so that they can use the compromised cards. And what we're seeing is an increase in the category of lost and stolen cards, because what's happened also of that particular modus operandi, we're seeing that almost 80% of the incidents relate to cards that were either stolen or swapped at ATMs.
Skimming devices are also on the rise. These include ATM-mounted skimming devices, point-of-sale devices, and handheld skimming devices.
On an ATM, we've also found over the last couple of years high-tech skimming devices where the perpetrator places a card, the skimming device, a little device which copies the card data as it goes into the machine, and they also have somewhere in the ATM a camera which will copy the PIN. And that's why one of our key messages this time, it's not a new message, but really a key message, is we're saying to people, please make sure that you cover the hand that's putting in the PIN.
Together, these tips for consumers: never accept assistance from strangers as they could be trying to distract you. Keep your PIN a secret, even from family or bank officials. Should your card be retained, block your card before leaving the site. Register for 3D security before using your bank card online. Despite an increase in debit card fraud, the banking industry has seen an overall card fraud decrease of 13.8% for the year. This is attributed to various measures which include the improvement of internal systems and processes. Diabo Sito, SABC News, Johannesburg.
Now, for more on the story, we're now joined in studio by the CEO of SABC, Kalyani Pillay. A very good morning to you and welcome.
Thank you, Elvis.
Now, how are we doing compared to other countries internationally when it comes to card fraud? And I'm also going to quiz you on ATM bombings.
With card fraud, the trends are the same across the globe. You find that with the rollout of EMV with chip and PIN, the perpetrators actually shift their modus operandi, and what's happening in South Africa is very much along the same trend that's happening across the globe. So you find the shift all the time. You deploy certain mechanisms to try and prevent any compromise on the cards, and of course the perpetrators shift to something else. So very much in line with international practice.
28.6%, that drop in credit card fraud, that is absolutely fantastic. You guys must be jumping for joy.
We're pleased. Of course, we're still not happy with the fact that we're still seeing so much, but certainly any decrease, and this was definitely a significant decrease, so the banks are pretty pleased about it.
But there's an alternative to that. Once the credit card fraud is coming down, but you had a problem that you indicated earlier to us.
Yes, we've seen within that category, because the banks have rolled out chip and PIN, the perpetrators shift their modus operandi, and they actually now are focusing more on online transactions, card not present transactions, because then you don't need the PIN. But like you've seen that we've seen an increase in debit card fraud of 8.3%, which of course is a concern for us. And again, there we're seeing different shifts in modus operandi. We're seeing perpetrators now shifting onto what we categorize as lost and stolen cards. And we're finding that within that category, almost 80% of the people that have had their cards compromised or money stolen out of their bank accounts have actually been as a result of interference or accepting assistance at an ATM. And so that's why we're saying to bank clients, don't accept assistance from anybody at all.
One of the tips that you've given to consumers is that they should register for 3D security.
Yes.
What is that all about?
That's absolutely important for people to do, especially when you're wanting to do online transactions, online buying, buying off websites and that kind of thing. And it's really not a problem to do that. So what they need to do, it's another level of security, another level of authentication that's required. So you register on your bank's website for this, and when you're doing the transaction online, just after, when you confirm the payment to be made, you'll get another screen coming up where it will ask for your authentication code. That code will be sent through to the device that you select to receive your communication. So most often people will select their mobile phones. And then while you're online, while you're doing the transaction, then that will come through onto your phone, and then you insert that number, and then of course the transaction will be further verified and authorized. So if somebody's in possession of your card details and wants to do a card transaction or buy online with your card, and you register for 3D Secure, they're not going to get that authentication code, so it's not going to allow the transaction to proceed.
That's a wonderful initiative.
It's also, with regard to 3D Secure, it's also important for consumers when they're shopping online, to make sure that the sites that they're shopping on are safe sites. So there's a number of things to look out for, but also they can look out to see whether that site is also registered for 3D Secure. So it's further, confirming the security of those sites.
I'm going to come back to tips and advice, but before we get to that, the increase in ATM bombings, which provinces are more prone for this type of activity?
We're actually not seeing any significant incidents in terms of ATM bombings. Those have reduced quite significantly over the years. And while they're still there, and we do have attacks here and there, they're really not as prevalent as they used to be. The perpetrators have actually changed their modus operandi, where they don't blow up, they're not blowing up the ATMs using commercial explosives as much as they used to. They actually shifted it to what we call grinding. So they grind open the ATM, and there's various reasons for that. The banks have deployed certain measures to try and secure those ATMs, which have obviously worked, which is why the perpetrators shift their modus operandi.
And that would include by tainting the money with dye?
Yes, dye stain technology has been deployed by a number of banks in their ATMs. And of course, that takes the value out of the cash because it's now stained money. And so that's why perpetrators look for alternate ways to access the cash.
Now, festive season is here. It's
Yes.
always a good time to be around, you
Yes.
know, but people are more vulnerable this time of the year. Let's start off with ATM usage.
Yes. Well, I think, you know, people use ATMs all the time, in and out of South Africa. So the advice and the tips that we give are applicable whether you're in or out of South Africa because the crimes are the same all over. So, you know, we say to people, first and foremost, that one of the most important things, always cover the hand that's putting in the PIN. And the reason for that is because, and even, not even only at an ATM, but even on a POS device, a point of sale device, when you're putting in your PIN, don't feel shy about whether the assistant is going to think you don't trust them. Just cover the hand that's putting in the PIN so that nobody sees your PIN number. Don't share that PIN number with anybody, you know, whether relatives, not even a bank official. But when you're at an ATM, the important thing is never ever to accept the assistance of anybody at an ATM, from anybody. Often perpetrators may do something at the ATM that may require a person to be, you know, to have their transaction not proceed, and then they get flustered and they wonder what's next, and then the perpetrator comes up and offers assistance. So we're saying, you know, don't allow that. Don't allow anyone to stand too close to you. Shoulder surfing is one of the things that also is done because they look over to try and get the PIN number. So, you know, those kind of things at an ATM, we say to people, and very importantly, if your card gets trapped in the ATM or there's some problem with it, don't move from the ATM until you call your bank. Stop that card and then move away from the ATM because often if something has, your card's been compromised in some way, the perpetrators often are able to retrieve that card and do a transaction very quickly at an ATM nearby. So you need to stop that card immediately.
Do criminals still have the device that they put in the ATM where you have a little camera?
Yes. Those are high-tech skimming devices, unlike the other one is the handheld, which can be used anywhere. The high-tech skimming devices are usually two pieces of equipment that's inserted into the computer, one at the mouth reader and one a camera somewhere in the ATM. And that's why we say cover, because even if it's there, then you're not going to get that PIN number. For this year already, right up to this month actually, the police were able to seize, the police together with the banks have seized 46 of those high-tech skimming devices. I'm sure there's more out there, but we're constantly on the lookout for them.
A number that people can call if they need assistance from someone?
The important thing is that each bank client should have the number of their bank's call center or fraud line as part of their contacts, but also importantly is for them to have the contact number of their mobile service provider. Because if they lose signal at any time, an unreasonable time of losing signal, it's very important to contact your mobile service provider to see whether there's a problem or not.
Kalyani, thank you so much for joining us here in studio.
An absolute pleasure.
Now, that was the CEO of the South African Banking Risk Information Centre, Kalyani Pillay. That's where we got to leave it. We'll take a break and we'll be right back after that.
Sorry, gentlemen, ladies and gentlemen, we have been banned.
It didn't happen to me on that day because I was already in jail when it happened.
I was scared that when I get back to Joburg, I was going to be arrested. Well, I wasn't. Who are you asking? You're looking at me?
Yes, Zubaydah, I'm talking to you.
So the old fuddy-duddies like Dennis and me will remain there.
I just want to say, Joe, that the thing about... damn, go on, and it's coming back to me.
So much more than just a legal and rights show. Join Dumile Mateza every Sunday at 2 p.m. only on the SABC News channel.
Good morning and welcome back. I'm Kendall Makamat and you're watching Newsroom. Now, our top story for this hour is suspended FIFA President Sepp Blatter and UEFA head Michel Platini have lost their appeals against the provisional 90-day bans by FIFA's Ethics Committee. They were suspended last month while FIFA's Ethics Committee investigated corruption claims against the both of them. Now, the decision is a further blow to Frenchman Platini's hopes of replacing Blatter as president of World Soccer's governing body. The Frenchman was favoured to replace him in the February 26 presidential voting, and FIFA's Electoral Committee registration cannot be processed while he's suspended. He'll also not be allowed to campaign or engage in any football-related activities until his suspension is lifted. Now, Platini is taking his appeal to the Court of Arbitration for Sport. Blatter also faces a criminal investigation in Switzerland over a 2 million Swiss franc payment from FIFA to Platini. Meanwhile, in a further twist to the ongoing investigation by U.S. authorities, the president of Chile's ANP, National Football Association, Sergio Jadue, has resigned from his post and gone to the United States to talk to the FBI about corruption at FIFA. South American Soccer Confederation CONMEBOL is also reeling from the corruption scandal. Several leading directors were among 14 FIFA officials and sports marketing executives indicted in May in a probe led by the US FBI into allegations of bribery, money laundering and wire fraud. A majority of them were from South America. Right now, staying with all things football, but on a very different note, the Walter Sisulu Soccer Challenge is a tournament which has a proud track record of giving the young future stars of South African soccer a platform to perform on. It's also delivered professional players such as Kaizer Chiefs strikers Pure Chabalala, Free State Stars and Bafana Bafana striker Edward Manglele, and current Bafana Bafana and Ajax Amsterdam midfielder Thulani Serero. It's now in its 13th year, and joining me is Phil Mohori, who is the chair of the Soweto FA, as well as spokesperson for the tournament. Good morning and welcome to Newsroom. So this tournament is currently in its 13th year, and what makes the partnership with Discovery make it a success?
It's a hard work, and honestly, and obviously it deliver what you promised, and do the right thing at the right time.
You've got over 100 teams that are in and around Soweto taking part this particularly. It's quite a lot of teams. Can you take us through the structure as well as how the teams will be divided? Thank you.
I think we're looking at football development. You have to look at the short term and the long term. First, we have to look at the senior teams. Obviously, most of those players are 18, 19, 20, 21. Then there are 56 of the seniors. And the long term, we've got 32 under 17. Then you've got women football, where I've put a lot of energy on it this year to say we'll be having 16 teams of women football. And I've realized that the only thing that women football is not coming all right is that we create sort of, it's an event-oriented project instead of putting more energy on football development. And we hope that we'll come all right on that.
16 teams women's football, that's quite a change.
Big one.
Now, one of the things that we need to talk about is, in 2010, post-2010, the World Cup Legacy Trust left 450 million rands for the development of football. Are you beneficiaries of this money?
Yes, in a sense of, you look at Soweto Football Association, that we are an amateur football, and what SAFA did to other LFN, to us, they look at bringing equipment on board to help the association in the format of money. And you look at the other project of coaching. You see, the challenge has been that if you don't have good coaches, you won't produce good players. You look at the referees, you'll see that Soweto have gone far, where a young boy was doing a game at the age of 16 years, doing the Kaizer Chiefs and MDC and Tax in the MDC competition. And you look at other referees. This year we have 7 referees that went to professional now. So obviously you'll see that we are pushing them hard. You look at the players now. You look at the boy Bule. He's playing for Kaizer Chiefs. Where does he come from? From Kaizer Chiefs under 17, Kaizer Chiefs under 20, where he plays in Soweto Football League, and he went to play for Discovery. And 2012 he was the player of the tournament.
I hear what you're saying, but I think it's quite key that we narrow it down as to what the Soweto FA has been able to do with its part of the Legacy Trust. Are you able to give us a little more detail in terms of specific projects that you've worked on, that we can look to and say, okay, cool, there's where that 100,000 rand went, or there's where that 2 million rand went?
We're running a project of the referees, which is referees development, obviously, for a period of 5 years. We're at the 3rd year this season. we just have license B for coaches, where we are pushing the coaches. You've seen Thabo Sinong, Rulani Mukwena is assistant to Pitso Msimane. Okay. Those are the coaches come through this legacy program. So we hope that SAFA will give him more. So it is big. We hope that maybe the president will think about giving us 3 million to make more projects. Because if you don't have money, I can tell you won't deliver.
Right, now let's talking about money. Soweto All-Stars walked away with a check of 70 big ones last year, 70,000 rand. Has there been a change to the prize money this year?
Yes, we just put 10,000. You know, the tournament is growing. We hope that there will be 80,000, and we hope that this year will also give the teams that goes to the last 4, each team will get 10,000 to reach the last 4.
Right, now you mentioned a little earlier that in the match that we watched a few days ago, Bafana, there were a couple of graduates from this program that were playing for Bafana. Yes,
I mean, you look at, I still have a card for Vilagazi when he was under 9.
Under 9?
Yes. Tulan Serero for Snawana Kanas and Tulan Tlachwayo for Snawana Kanas for Magin Tombela. The under 15, you used to have Patco, the Sticks Morewa Soccer Challenge. He played for under 17 and he went to play for the senior, and they were the champions of that tournament. So 3 of them, they were in a team for Bafana. And one, I was watching the game, I was proud to see that at least we're getting somewhere as football. So
when does the tournament start?
On the 1st, we'll start celebrating and also education on HIV. Remember, the world is celebrating and also giving education on HIV matter. So it process, we're taking note on that. We're also doing what you call making sure that people, the players, the coaches check high blood. We'll do what you call a wellness with clinics and clinics health group and discovery. Then on the 27th, we'll have the finals.
And what about the economic and social skills? Is that part of the program that you'll be taking these players through?
Yes, it's important that we do that. Remember, we've put grassroots in our center at Nike Center. And I've also thanked Nike Center for creating such a beautiful facility for us. Looking forward, you need to check these children. Remember, 99% of these children during the school holidays, parents are at work. What are they doing? Roaming around the street. So it's our duty as football, mainly for those who are football, those who are watching. Remember, you can't focus on players only. You only have those supporters and watch football.
Very good. Now, thank you so much, Phil Mukhodi from the Discovery Walter Sisulu Soccer Challenge, for coming through. We wish you the best with the tournament, unearthing new talent.
Thank you, sir.
Right, now was Phil Mukhodi from the Walter Sisulu Soccer Challenge. We're going to take a quick break. Eben Janssen is standing by. He's got more news.
The road to greatness is not an easy one. It's rough, tough, and full of barriers. And there's only one way to master it. Never, ever stop. Dauntless. The all-new Audi Q7.
Welcome back. This is still Newsroom. Time for us to take a look at the headlines around the African continent. 2 female suicide bombers have killed at least 15 people and injured more than 100 at a market in Kano in northern Nigeria. Eyewitnesses said that one of the bombs exploded at the entrance and inside the farm centre mobile market. No one has yet claimed responsibility for the attack, but it's suspected to be Boko Haram. This comes just a day after more than 30 people were killed by a suicide bomber in the city of Yola. Meanwhile, Chad's National Assembly have extended a state of emergency in the Western Lake region by 4 months. This comes after 12 people were killed in a recent double attack by Boko Haram militants there. The initial emergency was set to only last 12 days. Boko Haram have increased attacks in remote border areas around Lake Chad despite military interventions there. The African Union has heavily criticized the International Criminal Court for its harsh focus on the African continent. The AU has accused the court of unfairly targeting Africans for prosecution. This comes after a number of failed cases. Meanwhile, South African International Relations Minister Maite Ngwana Mashabane has also lashed out at the ICC over issues surrounding the arrest and transfer of suspects. The 14th session of the Assembly of States Parties is taking place in the Netherlands. Now, the recent release of this year's Brand Africa survey has caused quite a stir in the market. And to discuss the winners and losers in the survey and to help us understand how African brands compete on the global stage, while we are joined by our regular contributor and author of a book called Connect with the Continent, Terry Bean, and then the founder of Brand Africa, Debe Ikalafeng, who recognize the importance of building a positive image for Africa through branding. They are here with us in studio. Good morning, gentlemen. Thank you very much for joining us.
Thank you for having us, Evan.
Always nice to have you with us, Terry. But let's start with you, Terry. What is Brand Africa 100, Africa's best brands? What's it all about?
Well, Brand Africa was established in 2009, and it's an intergenerational movement to change the image of the continent, rather to create a positive image of the continent, to celebrate our diversity, and to drive the competitiveness of the continent. It's really an African initiative by Africans to create a great Africa.
Terry, why is the Brand Africa report so important for the continent within that context?
I think it's important because it tells us who the main players in the continent are from a branding point of view. It highlights the international brands, it highlights the Pan-African brands, and it very clearly, and more importantly, in a very definitive, measurable context, tells us their value, what they represent, what they stand for, and how the market views them.
What are some of the top African brands? And tell us, why is it so important to measure brands?
I'll start with the second question. It's important to measure brands because it's going to do three things. When a country or a continent is creating great brands, it enables the country to create jobs. Because when those brands are thriving, it means jobs are being created. We desperately need jobs in the continent. The second thing is when those companies are thriving, they're able to pay taxes. If they retain the taxes in Africa. And those taxes will enable any country and the continent totally to be able to pay for the public goods, the roads, the education that we so desperately need. And third and most important, great brands help to create a positive image of the continent. We know who America is through the brands of America. We know who Europe is through the brands of Europe and Italy and France, etc. Those are the three most important reasons on why we should create brands. It helps us to pay our bills so that we can stop borrowing and stop blaming and stop begging.
You still haven't told me the top brands, but I'll get back to that now.
I'm very happy to discuss the top brands, African brands with you. No doubt, the most definitive African brand is MTN. Present in Africa in 17 countries, admired by Africans throughout the continent, because what MTN has been, it has been an enabler and a catalyst for Africans to be able to transact. So that's number one on the list. And then you've got Glo, which is a Nigerian brand, MTN's closest competitor in Nigeria, which obviously gives MTN a run for his money, not just in Nigeria, but also regionally within West Africa. And then you've got number three, Dangote. Now, Dangote is, again, the definitive industrial brand in Africa, investing $500 million in a cement factory in Ethiopia. To me, it speaks about an Africa that is rising and thriving.
That's the good news. But it comes down to investment and it comes down to growth. What is the report or the survey, Terry, telling us about about investment and growth in the African continent?
It tells two distinct stories. I think it talks very definitively around the growth of African brands and how they have grown not just continentally but globally over the last number of years. I think what has to be kind of couched with that is African brands are also still embryonic. They're still young.
Yeah.
So they're still exposed to a lot of market risk. So when you have a situation where the oil price drops by 50% and that has a knock-on risk on tax, on consumer spending, you see then brands that have been doing really well over the last decade taking a slight knock in the short term because they're very tied into local market requirements. Then conversely, you see global brands who are looking all over the world for growth and growth opportunities. And I think with that exception, they've all zoned in on the continent as a way and as a means of increasing their growth and their sort of enhancement from a revenue point of view. I think the difference is what's good for us.
Yeah.
Like Tebe said, African brands who invest in Africa and for the lion's share keep their tax revenue in Africa.
Yeah.
International brands who invest in Africa, while incredibly powerful on the continent, are taking the majority of that benefits and the majority of that revenue offshore.
We should tax them before they take the money out of the continent, Terry. It almost sounds a little bit like colonialism.
But it's a big issue. I mean, it is an issue internationally. If you look at where I come from, in Ireland, it's been used as a tax haven by a lot of international companies. There's a big argument with companies like Google and with companies like Starbucks, who are shifting a significant amount of their revenue into offshore markets so they can repatriate that back to their home country. African companies tend not to do that. They tend to invest and reinvest in their own markets.
I want to talk about the top brand, MTN, you mentioned. We've seen them embroiled in this massive scandal. Nigeria, South Africa, it's almost a diplomatic event that's going down. How has it affected them?
Well, probably on the financial end of it. I mean, we know they've lost about 20 to 25% of the share value on the stock exchange.
Yeah.
But in terms of what MTN's purpose is in Africa, that remains on track, serving over 200 million consumers around the continent. What customers ask every day, they ask the question, if I buy an MTN SIM card, can I call, can I transact, and that MTN is delivering on. So in terms of being the most admired brand in Africa, that will remain. But in terms of them being the most valuable brand, well, of course, value has got to do with the bottom line. So that will be impacted in that respect. Matter of fact, a quick survey which was done in Nigeria, which around the continent rather, post this controversy right now. The survey established that consumers, even Nigerians, particular consumers, are saying, you know what? Yeah, they should be punished for this transgression, but my phones are getting through, and that's what matters to me.
Yes.
I don't think any less of them, but in terms of a corporate entity, I think they should pay their bills, and they should comply, rather, with the laws of the country. And I think even everybody, whether it's MTN, any other company, or even South Africa, the company itself, have made it very clear that whether you're a South African company or any other company doing business in anybody else's country, you must comply with the laws. That is an administrative controversy or administrative issue rather than a consumer issue. As far as consumers are concerned, MTN is the most admired brand.
Service, service, service. That's what people want. In conclusion, Terry, tell us about this time that we are in, the Made in Africa brands. Is it that time? Is it a good time?
I think we're in the African century. I mean, we're still at the beginning of it, so there's still plenty of time to see what's going to happen. But if you look at we always talk about the macroeconomic factors. We're coming close to 1 billion people. We've got economies that have, it's cut back, but we're still growing aggregated at 3.7% for the next year. So the basic information is there. The world wants more. It makes sense to build our own brands. It makes sense to not, as I say, even, we don't outsource our salvation.
Yeah.
We want to build our own brands. We want to build our own heroes so that we can create more jobs, we can create more tax revenue, and companies can benefit and people can benefit.
I love the optimism that these gentlemen come, the African evangelists, I'm going to call them today. Thank you for joining us. That's where you can have a look at Africa's best brands. Of course, Tebe Ikalefeng is the founder of Brand Africa, and Terry is the author of Connect with the Continent. They constantly tell us about the African century. It is that time, but it is for us to make a contribution in our individual capacities as well. Gentlemen, thank you for joining us this morning.
Eben, thank you so much for having us over.
Brilliant. Now, of course, one of those scenarios is technology, and it's developing at a very fast rate as society adapts and connects on a variety of platforms. So businesses are also expected to keep up. Although the African continent is seen more often in a bad light, it has fantastic growth potential. Research suggests that Africa is booming with the seemingly unstoppable growth of the mobile phone, greater access to the internet, and an increase in access to education. Change is happening right now. But to give us an outsider's investor's perspective, why investors are interested in Africa, we are joined by the CEO of RBN Netherlands, Hans Osnabrugge, from our studios in Cape Town. Very good morning to you, Hans. Thank you for joining us.
Good morning.
Hans, now you've recently launched your latest travel app here on the continent. It's called Talk 360, which offers international calling options. Tell us why you've decided to invest in South Africa and in the wider continent.
I think the first point is just like you said, Africa is mobile. Africa is fast growing. It has a beautiful population which wants to grow, which wants to communicate. And we offer the possibilities for every African to make sure that they can communicate with their friends, both in the country and outside the country, for just a few rand cents.
You believe passionately in the product. It's a fantastic product. Do you believe the time is right now? And do you think it's a product that Africa needs right now?
Absolutely. Yeah. If you look at the internet infrastructure, you see that people still depend for their international calls on the standard telecom providers, but they are expensive when it comes to international calls. And the free alternatives like Skype, WhatsApp, etc., come with too much limitations. Because with the current internet infrastructure we have within Africa, you can have a good internet connection as the one that makes the call, but the chances that the one receiving the call also has a good internet connection, those chances are really low, and we don't see that changing too much the next few years. So that's why we believe that our solution, in which the one receiving the call does not need to be online, does not need an app, doesn't notice any difference, can fill that big gap within Africa.
Hans, I want to talk quickly about investment on the continent. You've decided to put your money here. What is it that you see as the opportunities within the investment fraternity or the investment space here on the continent?
I think the opportunities are fantastic. We are joining partnerships with the leading resellers within South Africa. We have a partnership with First Bank in Nigeria, with BE in Egypt, and yesterday we just signed a contract with one of the biggest operators within Somalia. We think by partnering with the local people, enabling everyone also to become a reseller of our product, both to consumers and to businesses, we can make sure that people that are now unemployed can make a good living, can help their friends in the community to save money, and make sure they make a decent income. So we are happy to reinvest everything we make here back into the continent, and we strongly believe in that.
Hans, what are your numbers? I mean, you guys have done a lot of research on this. What are your numbers saying about Africans? For instance, how are they traveling compared to Europeans right now?
We think the traveling is still a bit low. So if you compare that between Africa and Europe, I think the travel percentage is 50% less than within Europe and in the US. And our product is also mainly used for that people call inside of the country just for a few cents, or also internationally towards their friends at home or their business partners in other countries. But for the traveling part, I think the African continent is still a bit behind. But you see that, of course, changing rapidly with more low-cost carriers on the airplane side.
Hans, thank you very much for joining us. That is fly from Cape Town, the CEO of RBN Netherlands, Hans Osnabrugge, in South Africa, telling us about their app. It's called Talk 360, and they're going to be launching it all around the continent. And all the best, and thank you for joining us here today. Now, let's take a look at what's happening around the continent. We'll start with the newspapers in Swaziland. The Observer there reports that Swaziland Revenue Authority wants an amount of 50 million Imalangeni from Mpunzi Wholesalers, a company they are embroiled in a marathon case that started from November 2013. Then we move to Namibia. The Namibian says unemployment among the youth rose drastically from 28% in 2011 to 43.4% in 2012 and 13 respectively, and about half of the youth were unemployed in the informal sector as well. Then finally, in Lesotho, the Times there says a call has been made for the National Assembly to harmonise constitutional and customary laws to protect young girls from child marriage, as well as ensuring their human and reproductive rights. Now, a little over a week ago, the country experienced scorching temperatures with little to no hope of rain in sight. The situation has turned quickly, however, with the South African Weather Service issuing a warning for severe thunderstorms with hail and strong winds for the entire week. Now, as our usual resident meteorologist and environmental enthusiast, Tsetse Manare, is here in studio to give us some light on these extreme changes and how we should be preparing going forward. Good morning.
Good morning. How are you?
I'm very good today, but the weather is worrying me. Why is it so extreme lately? And in terms of these hailstorms we're seeing, right? Can't we just have a little bit of rain?
Yeah, I wish it was the case. That's what makes the job so difficult, even. And I've told you so many times that, one day we're forecasting really hot conditions and we're thinking there's not going to be rain for the next couple of months. In fact, there's not going to be persistent rain for the next couple of months. And then out of nowhere, we get these, severe thunderstorms that come with strong winds and with destruction like this. Yeah. This is what's happening in the East Rand. In fact, this was about a day or two ago. And it's quite hectic. You saw some of the hail damage that was caused in a place such as what you call this area in the North Riding regions, Four Ways, as well as up north towards Pretoria. Yeah, and in Midrand, of course. So, these things tend to happen, and now it's being really, really severe because of the process that we've been going through, the El Nino that's going through. And the El Nino coupled with climate change making these storms a lot more severe. And we've seen even worse things such as the monsoons in India, the droughts here in South Africa, as well as over Southern Africa, the heavy rainfall in some parts of the United States, and also possibilities of an extended winter now in the United Kingdom, also really cold weather. China, it started snowing about 2-3 days ago as well, and they're expecting really cold conditions and, dark days for the next couple of days. So,
what are we expecting here in Southern Africa going forward the next month, 2 months, 3 months? Dry?
That's basically a good question. What we're expecting is also a mixture again in terms of heat waves coming up. There's already one cropping up over the southwestern parts of the country into the Western Cape as well as over the Northern Cape. If you can go to the weather system, I put up a couple of images to show what's going to be coming up for us in the next 5 days, in the next couple of months, and also what you need to look out for if you've got plans.
Do we have the weather system?
Yeah,
do we have it up?
We do have the weather system. It's going to come up in just a short while. But while that's coming up, what's happening is, so over the southwestern parts, hot weather is expected along those regions.
There we have it.
Yeah, this is just a satellite image that's just showing. You see the light shaded areas there?
Yes.
That's where we're expecting severe thunderstorms. That's basically what thunder looks like.
But no, this moisture, does it come from the north? Does it come from the tropics?
Yeah. It's basically coming in, and you can see how it's concentrated in Botswana as well as over Zimbabwe. Yeah, and it's going to be coming through over the next couple of days. This is the things that you should be expecting.
Plenty of those.
Yeah, lightning, and also some snowfalls will be coming up. This is hail.
Yes.
And this was also taken just north of Gauteng. You can see the destruction it's doing.
Yeah, I had a similar scenario playing out at my house, to be honest.
Yeah.
And it looked just like that with lots and lots of hail. But now the thing I wanted to ask you, now that we've seen this extreme rain, does that mean we're clear from the drought now? How do we, as the public, how do we approach the next couple of months?
No, unfortunately not. So this is the rainfall pattern. If this stays like this, maybe for the next couple of days, 10 to 15 days or so, and we get something about 100 millimeters of rain persistently, that's when I will safely say, okay, maybe now we are a bit clear from the drought. But it looks like it's not happening. It's starting to get dry again from the western side of the country.
Yeah.
So it's going to move on all the way towards the east and covering the Eastern Cape as well as KwaZulu-Natal. And it's really not that great news for us in terms of what's going to be happening in the next couple of days or so. So we're still expecting some heat waves, especially beginning in December, and possibly other thunderstorms will be coming through.
Well, Tsetse, thank you very much for joining us. The outlook is, as you saw there, the 5-day outlook for the next couple of days is going to be hot, but then going into next week, we're going to have another heat wave. It seems going to be dry and hot, and you're going to have to use the water that has just fallen very sparingly. Thank you, Tsietse.
Thank you very much.
As always, always brilliant to have him with us in studio. Gives us the sharp end of the weather and the environment. And yes, we are going into a very, very risky, very insecure time with regards to both of those. Top of the hour, we'll be back with another news update. Kendall and Elvis are standing by to bring us that. See you then.
SABC News. We report, contextualize and present news and current affairs honestly, fairly and fully. We consider it a duty to provide consistent, relevant, useful and top quality information and analysis. Our mission is to provide credible, accurate and interesting news programming, bringing news into everyone's homes in everyone's languages. Thank you, South Africa, for relying on SABC News for quality news output and for making us your #1 source of information. SABC News, Africa's news leader.
Welcome to Network, a technology news program that also discusses what's trending in social media in and around Africa. MTN has launched its new movie and television streaming service, Front Row. If it's trending, we will find it. That's Network with me, Spumelele Zondi, every Sunday at 7:30 p.m. only on the SABC News channel.
It's indeed 1100 hours Central Africa time on this Wednesday, the 19th of November 2015. Jumbo Africa, and a very warm welcome to the final hour. This is Newsroom. I'm Elvis Preston. I'll be with you until 12 o'clock. You have to stay with us as we broadcast live from Auckland Park Studios in Johannesburg, South Africa, to the rest of the African continent. First, let's take a look at all your news headlines. The United Nations Advisory Board on Water and Sanitation is calling for a new intergovernmental panel within the UN to resolve emerging water challenges around the world. Minister for International Relations, Maitano Mashabane, says she does not want South Africa to be forced to choose between membership of the International Criminal Court and Pan-African commitments. And New York Mayor Bill de Blasio says there is no threat against New York City, despite a newly released video by ISIS suggesting that the city is a potential target of attacks such as those in Paris. Those were all your headlines, but first let's find out from Kendall Makamate what's happening in the sports field. On the sports field, that is. A very good morning to you, Kendall.
Good morning, Elvis. It's actually on as well as off the sports field that we've got news on today. But before I carry on, let me greet our viewers as well. Good morning to you. Now, this is what we've got for you in the sports today. Suspended FIFA President Sepp Blatter and European soccer head Michel Platini have lost their appeals against their 90-day bans by FIFA. Former WADA President Dick Pounce says the way is open for Russia to solve its doping problems ahead of the Rio 2016 Olympic Games. And Richie McCaw brings to an end a glittering 14-year career and mourns the passing of rugby superstar Jonah Lomu. That, in a nutshell, is what we've got for you in the sports. Make sure you stick around for that. Around about 11:30 or so. Back to you, Alex.
Thank you, Kendall. Let's now start off with your top story this hour. President Jacob Zuma is expected to answer oral questions in the National Assembly this afternoon. Now, this will be his last oral reply session in the Assembly for this year. 6 questions will be posed to the President. President Zuma will face a question from the IFP on whether the IEC is still able to maintain its track record of running free and fair elections as promised in 1994. The ACDP wants the President to answer the question on Israel's reaction to the hosting of Hamas by the ANC. The UDM wants the President to give an indication of how the rollout of ICT connectivity is giving ordinary citizens access to information. 3 of the 6 questions will be asked by the ANC. Follow-up questions will also be asked by political parties during the session. After today, President Zuma's next engagement with the National Assembly is expected to be in February during his State of the Nation address. The United Nations Advisory Board on Water and Sanitation is calling for a new intergovernmental panel within the United Nations to resolve emerging water challenges around the world. Releasing a report in New York, the board warned that the current water and sanitation infrastructure requires a major overhaul if the world is to meet post-2015 objectives.
The world faces a growing water crisis, with increasing numbers of people living under water stress, worsening flood and drought catastrophes, while the resource itself is being badly managed.
Every day, a woman somewhere has to walk further to get water. Every day, a diesel pump has to go down further to pull the water up from underneath. Every day, cities have to go further away. Every day, more rivers have to be captured and put into reservoirs to reach the water. Every day, more developments take place in the urban areas, and some of them contribute more sewage. How on earth do you convey the emerging drama created by all of these measures?
For greater awareness to be given to issues of water and sanitation, for quality drinking water to be better managed, including monitoring and reporting, for sanitation to be brought into the mainstream, and for better financing for the sector, among others. And it wants the UN system to take the lead.
It is time to consider an architecture at the global level that is fit for purpose. The key elements of a global thematic architecture organized within and around the UN are typically an intergovernmental platform that meets regularly on the matter to ensure a coordinated leadership by governments.
The report comes at a time when many regions, be that from California on the United States West Coast to South Africa at the tip of Africa, that are encountering severe droughts, with millions facing water shortages in the coming months. The point this report is trying to highlight is that there needs to be a broader global coordination around water and sanitation issues to ensure greater mitigation and water security in the years ahead. Shervin Bryce-Pease, SABC News, New York.
In a bid to mitigate the drought gripping some parts of the country, the Northwest Department of Agriculture is providing fodder to livestock farmers. The province is one of the hardest hit by recent drought and bad weather conditions, which has led to little rainfall. Scientists attributing the weather pattern to the El Niño effect. More than 21,000 farmers have applied to government for relief aid and assistance.
Help has arrived for farmers in the Northwest. Their animals are already in a bad state. The rollout of fodder, which started in Hopani village, will go to all the districts. The provincial government says it is trying to help farmers weather the storm.
We then took a decision to do this intervention so that our people can find temporary relief. This is not the only relief. The second one is with water. The third one is sharing information with our people on how they can manage their livestock.
In Hopani village, more than 170 farmers benefited. But there are concerns about how other applicants for assistance will benefit.
Our focus currently will be on those that we have registered And when we receive that national intervention, we should be able to go even to those that did not register at that point in time.
Farmers are already in high spirits at the prospects of saving their withering animals.
I feel great. This is a new thing here for us in Khopane. It is the first time, but we'll appreciate it if it continues.
In the last 2 weeks, we've lost a cow after it gave birth. We then had to continue feeding the calf with a bottle.
The predictions are that the prevailing conditions will continue until next year. Tsolofelo Matibedi, SABC News, Khopane Village.
Now here's a warning. Bogus colleges promising more that they can deliver are expected to be on the rise this season, especially during the festive season for 2016 placement. Now, this as thousands of grade 12 learners are due to matriculate, and that renders them desperate for qualifications. As SABC News found on the streets, at least just here in Johannesburg, plans are already in place to dupe thousands into obtaining fake qualifications. The Department of Higher Education and Training says this year, 41 bogus colleges were shut and their owners face fraud charges.
On almost every corner in the Johannesburg CBD, pamphlets are being distributed, promising supposed quality tertiary education at not so affordable prices. Gauteng still leads with the number of bogus institutions, while other provinces are also seeing increased cases.
Opened about 41 cases against these colleges. We are happy that amongst those, we have managed to secure a conviction in one of them, 6-year conviction. So the rest of others are before court. We are waiting the process to unfold itself, and we are hopeful that the trend will be the same in terms of the outcome.
You're urged to ask to see a registration certificate for the college you wish to enroll at. Check that the date on the registration certificate covers the year of your study. And also, if the course you've enrolled for is accredited to be offered at the institution. While the Department of Higher Education and Training has had great success in clamping down on these bogus institutions, they keep mushrooming all over the country. So students and parents have been warned, particularly at this time of the year, not to be duped into 2016 placements. But a simple walk in Johannesburg CBD, it's easy to pick up a pamphlet like this, already offering a range of courses for 2016. A quick check with the Department of Higher Education and Training is accredited. It's accredited to offer some of these programs. So before you part with your hard-earned cash, you're advised to call the department to check if an institution is credible. Criselda Lewis, SABC News, in Johannesburg.
New York City authorities say there is no specific and credible threat against the city. Now this despite a newly released IS video suggesting America's most populous city is a potential target of attacks such as those in Paris, France.
The 6-minute clip shows a brief glimpse of Times Square, a midtown Manhattan crossroads, popular with tourists, and a suicide bomber holding what appears to be a trigger. The IS video includes a scene that appears to show a suicide bomber making preparations and zipping up a jacket. However, New York Mayor Bill de Blasio says residents should continue their life as there is nothing to be feared.
We understand it is the goal of terrorists to intimidate and disrupt our democratic society. We will not submit to their wishes. The people of New York City, as you can see right now, are going about their business even at this late hour. I want to encourage all New Yorkers to continue to go about their business normally. It's important to note that there is no credible and specific threat against New York City. NYPD has been working very, very closely with the FBI and our other federal partners, and I again repeat, there is no specific and credible threat against New York City.
Meanwhile, French authorities say human remains found on the rubble of a flat where a standoff took place yesterday in Paris between police and suspects of last week Friday terror attacks are yet to be identified. Paris prosecutor François Molins says the fate of the suspected organizer of the Friday's attack remains unknown.
Meanwhile, in Nigeria, 2 female suicide bombers have blown themselves up at the mobile market in the city of Kano. 14 people were killed and more than 100 others wounded. That attack comes a day after a blast in the northeastern city of Yalo, which killed 32 and injured 80 rather. The assault bore the hallmarks of Boko Haram. It suggests that the militant group is stepping up its operations. The Minister of International Relations, Maite Nkoane Mashabane, says she does not want South Africa to be forced to choose between membership of the ICC, the International Criminal Court, and Pan-African commitments. Nkoane Mashabane added that if the ICC continues in this direction, it will crumble.
As the International Criminal Court holds the annual meetings of its political members, the South African Minister for International Relations, Maite Nkoane Mashabane, pushed for more respect from the court for African countries. South Africa has been at loggerheads with the ICC since the court ordered an explanation about why authorities didn't hand over indicted Sudanese President Omar al-Bashir when he visited an AU summit in Johannesburg. The minister has not ruled out the idea that the government is considering leaving the jurisdiction of the ICC.
We don't want to ever, as South Africa, after having been part of the formation and the drafters of the Rome Statutes, to ever be asked to choose between ICC and our Pan-African agenda. We think that would be asking for too much.
Is that to say that you would choose the Pan-African agenda?
I just want to repeat what I said, because this is what I've been saying the whole day. We do not want to ever be put in a situation where we must choose.
South Africa would be the first country to withdraw from the court if it did so, but some observers are questioning the government's persistence in this matter.
If I was South Africans, I would be asking very difficult questions. I would be saying there's no dog in this fight for South Africa, and South Africa needs to withdraw from this space and mind domestic issues. And I suspect South Africans have got many domestic issues that they need to be talking about at this time.
Meetings in The Hague will continue for a number of days yet, and the other members of the ICC will be trying to persuade South Africa to remain signed up to the court.
The minister continued to refuse to state concretely whether South Africa is prepared to leave the International Criminal Court, but it does seem that it could become a realistic prospect. Jack Parrick, SABC News, The Hague.
And that's your news for now. We'll take a break, and Eben Janssen will be back right after that with your regional news.
The road to greatness is not an easy one. It's rough, tough, and full of barriers. And there's only one way to master it. Never, ever stop. Dauntless. The all-new Audi Q7.
In Africa, mobile devices are tools to make payments, browse the internet, and keep governments in check with social media forums.
It's given an average African too much power in their hands.
And tech creativity is solving some of the continent's problems.
Everything is internet-driven.
And on Network, we tell you how Africans are using technology and social media in their everyday lives.
Join Siphumelele Zondi on Network every Sunday at 19:30 CAT.
Welcome back. You're still with Newsroom here on SABC News. Time for us to take a regional focus on, regards to news here in South Africa. And today it's got a real sports flavour to it. The Eastern Province Rugby Union has welcomed the takeover of its Super Rugby franchise, the Southern Kings, by the South African Rugby Union. SARU's administrative takeover was sparked by an ongoing cash flow problem that has resulted in a number of players leaving the province. SARU wants to stabilise the union before Super Rugby kicks off in February of next year.
The move is thought to have been triggered by Kings President Chick Watson's failure to secure a massive 200 million rand sponsorship in Australia. SARU will now provide much-needed financial backing to the cash-strapped union ahead of next year's Super Rugby edition. It will also assist in recruiting key players and administrators. Watson says his union has never had headline or naming sponsorship for years.
I've never known of any major sponsorship to come into EP Rugby besides British Airways way back then with the blue stand. So there's been a reluctance all along. Why? Whether it's a mindset, whether it's the people of the city that see a glass half empty instead of half full, who knows?
Watson has also raised concern with an exodus of black players who have come through the ranks. Non-payment of salaries has made them to cancel their contract to join other teams.
It's painful to lose them. But I'd also like to say it's painful to lose any player that comes from this region, that's been nurtured from this region.
The clubs who make up the EP Rugby have mixed feelings about the latest developments.
We don't know what their plan would be when they take power. Obviously, our interest as clubs is that our local players get a chance to play for their province as they move from local clubs to go play for other provinces. So we would expect that the EP looks internally before they start importing all the old retired players.
We want a transformed administrative arm of the franchise as going to be put by SA Rugby. In that effect, we've also sent them an email through the president of SA Rugby Union, engaging them as Transformation Coalition. We would like to have a meeting with them to see what is it that they intend to implement on our behalf as the Eastern Cape Rugby people.
The Southern Kings are scheduled to host the Sharks at the Nelson Mandela Bay Stadium on the 27th of February. Zolani Moya, SABC News, Port Elizabeth.
Now, for more on this story, let's cross to Port Elizabeth, where our reporter in that piece, Zolani Moya, is standing by with the chairman of the Transformation Coalition, Mr. Bantwini Matika, and the former Eastern Province coach, Stanta Blanche. A very good morning to you, Zolani. Before you start your interview, just set the scene for us.
A very good morning to you, Eben. Indeed, yes, you are crossing live indeed here in Port Elizabeth. The cash flow problem started 6 months ago, when former Lions coach Carlon Spencer was then appointed as skills and attack coach. You know, he then opted to part ways with the union due to non-payments. Since then, its financial EP King's financial woes are deepened. Now, SARU has opted to come in to provide much stability. With me here, I have the chairperson of the Transformation Coalition, Bantwini Matika. Bantwini, tell us, we know that your organization has been very, very, very critical of SARU due to its low pace of transformation over the years. Now SARU has opted to step in. What is the organization's views on it?
We are very much skeptical. We are not sure what's going to happen because we know SARU's track record on transformation is not impressive at all. But we were also happy in a way because we are still guaranteed that it's going to Super Rugby. They've revoked the ownership clause, so they are taking what belongs to them anyway to ensure that the Eastern Cape does not lose out in the franchise.
Eastern Cape, you know that Eastern Cape has been perceived as the home of black rugby over the years, and we know that players such as Lizo Koboka, Tembelane Boli have come through the ranks. Now, seemingly, we're losing these players.
That's a sad story. It all happens because of the uncertainty, because everyone wants to be certain about his or her future in terms of going forward, especially these are young people that they must plan their future at an early stage. If you have administration that is not supporting their aspirations to ensure that they are stable as players, they are stable in society because of their income, so that's a very bad thing. Thirdly, we also need to ensure, as Transformation Rugby Coalition, that a certain percentage of the budget has got to be ring-fenced this time, because remember, 2013, where the franchise here, black rugby benefited nothing out of that. If you look at all the franchises in the country, white community benefits a lot as compared to black community. We therefore want to say, 2016, please, let's put aside a budget for black rugby from Border, EP, and SVA. We're talking about something like 15% of the total budget of the franchise of the Eastern Cape. We're also saying that because we know all the CEOs, the coaches, the support staff in these franchises are white, would expect then here we have black coaches, we have black CEO who can run this and administration. But we're disappointed as well because SA Rugby took over, but the president of EP appointed a young, inexperienced white coach. That it tells us the system is still racist, and there's no space for young people because he really does not have an experience.
On the 29th of this month, there's going to be an annual general meeting. From a club perspective, can you expect a vote of no confidence towards Mr. Chicky Watson from the clubs?
No, that's a call for clubs. I can't speak for the clubs. The clubs will have to interrogate why are we here, what went wrong, how, and if they've made that analysis, it's up to the club to decide how do we get out of the mess. So really, I can't comment on to what's going to happen because I really don't know.
Stan, yourself, you are the legend of the game indeed. Nobody's doubting that. I mean, you played for EP, you coach EP at the same time. What is your view on the latest developments?
Zolani, I must be honest with you. You know, I will tell you that there's nobody who's done more for EP rugby over the years than Cheeky Watson. But EP has always had a sickness, whether it's 1950 or 2050. As the proverb, united we stand, divided we fall. And EP rugby at this stage is very divided. You've got to have somebody at the top who can get all the rugby people together and, more importantly, all the business people together, that they're united in serving EP rugby. I've got nothing against Saru, but we've got to have our own people who know what's going on to run the show here. So from my side of view, I think we need a change.
What is your take on these 19 players that have just been signed?
Yes, Zolana, that's another thing. You know, our under-19 team did brilliantly this year. You can't give them enough accolades. But the thing that hurts me the most, you get a chap like Kerwin Bosch, the fly-off, who's going away. And such talent, we can't lose. And the same chaps that you just mentioned, we can't afford to lose people like that. But when you start planning, your tight five and your halfback, you don't just get all those chaps who they signed. I would just keep Kerwin Bosch and look for tight five forwards. They're the ones that lay the foundation for victory. So to me, when we sign, we must sign carefully. Rather go for something worthwhile than just go for anything.
What could be the way forward as a sports analyst?
The way forward is that whoever is in charge, the first thing you do, like I can't emphasize enough, I believe you've got to get somebody who can unite EP rugby, and that's a very difficult task. But I believe there is somebody outside there who can, get us all together and working together. And secondly, then I say, whoever is buying players, man, you don't just buy every Tom, Dick and Harry. As I say, I mentioned Kerwin Bosch, but there are so many others like that. The under-19s, I fear for that because the other provinces are going to buy them left, right and centre, and EP will be back to where they were before 2015.
Thank you. That was our sports legends, Mr. Stan Blanche, basically giving us just a general overview of what has transpired regarding the EP rugby over the past few months. But what is going to be interesting is to how SARU is going to try and craft strategies to try and restore the negative image that has been tainted by the negative reports that have occurred over the last few days. Well, that is what I have here for now in Port Elizabeth. Back to you in Auckland Park.
Yeah, thank you very much to Zolani. Very nice look at what's happening in rugby in the Eastern Cape. Passionate rugby people down in the Eastern Cape. Let's hope that they can get the house in order there. Seems as if it's a region that's divided. But we stay with rugby. The Griquas in Kimberley, well, they're hard at work practicing for the new season as well. The team went through a tough patch this year, losing a major sponsor. It seems to be a constant theme. And then some prominent senior players. They also finished last in the ABSA Currie Cup competition, but with a new coach and also 16 new contracted players. Things, they say, are looking up.
Hard at work to rectify the mistakes. It wasn't a rosy year for the Griquas team, but things are set to change for the better.
The will to achieve and the want to achieve was there. We just didn't, unfortunately, get it right. So we've learned lessons from it, and I think you're stupid if you don't learn from your past mistakes. And, it's a fresh new start. We've got 16 current new players in the group, a lot of young, fresh players from various unions and some homegrown talent coming through.
Their aim is to put pride back into the Griquas jersey and create a brotherhood. The team kept some of its core players, and the younger guys need to earn their colours.
I think the coming season we're going to be well prepared to play 80 minutes, and we're actually working hard on creating a brotherhood culture inside the team. Yeah.
I think we've got the right guys to play the game plan that you want us to play next year, and so far things are going well. Everyone, we're executing it well so far, so hopefully that it will bring us a cup next year.
The Griquas want to make their supporters proud again next season. The Griquas has a tough year behind them after coming in at the bottom of the ABSA Currie Cup lock sheet. With a new coach and players, the team is adamant that history won't be repeating itself next year. Reginald Witboy, SABC News, Kimberley.
Now to tell us a little bit more about what's ahead for the Griquas, of course, their coach, Peter Engeldo. He's live in our studios in Kimberley just to give us a quick heads up. Very good morning to you, Peter. Thanks for joining us.
Hi there, Eben. How's it going?
Good, man. Tough year behind you guys, but they say you learn more from the tough patches than you do from when things are going well, isn't it?
Yeah, that's true indeed. Been lucky enough, we reviewed our season straight after the Currie Cup and worked very closely with Peter Bach and done a lot of analysis, and we're very excited where we're headed towards with the new start. But yeah, you're stupid if you don't learn from the seasons past, and it was difficult, but as Harvey's the coach who's left us now said, I'd rather be playing top division rugby and ending last than playing in the bottom division. So a big challenge for us, but it was also an exciting year, and we've learned from it, and it's time to move forward.
You've lost a major sponsor, which is always a setback. Well, we just saw with the Kings also, they're battling for sponsorship. The smaller teams in South Africa, are you guys up against it when it comes to sponsorship?
Yeah, look, I can't lie to you. It puts pressure on the union, but yeah, we unfortunately lost GWK or Geweer Car last year, and it's unfortunate. They were a big company in the Northern Cape, and it'd be great to get local companies in the Northern Cape backing us. But luckily enough, we had Orange River Sellers, Horseshoe Metal, and Wildeklaver stepped in to help us last year. But we're looking for new sponsors. And it's an ongoing struggle, but my concern is, and how I can help is, I've got to get the performance right on the field, and that's my department, and that also contributes to us getting finances going forward.
On the field, you say that's your department. Where do you think are the challenges or the areas that you guys have to get in ship shape ahead of the season?
Yeah, in reviewing, I discussed it with the management team. I've got two focus areas. The first thing, I want to put Griquas first. I think we've lost our way a bit in where we're trying to go and creating our own identity and our own environment. So the first thing I want to do is I want to put pride back in the jersey. I'm very passionate about that. And I think with the pride being back, it helps a lot of areas on the field. And then secondly, as you heard Jonathan Ardendorf say, we're working very hard on our culture and environment. which every team does, but we're speaking about a brotherhood and a family, and it's quite easy to do in Kimberley. It's quite a small place, so the guys are very tight already, and we're into week 3 of our training, and it's going very well. I'm massively excited.
Your home ground has always been a fortress there in Kimberley. Teams have always pointed out it's difficult to travel there. Do you feel you've lost that a little bit, and that's something that you want to get back as well?
I think that's a great question, Eben. Yes, it is. What goes with that is we've identified some areas. So our conditioning and strength, and Neil Murphy, our conditioning coach, is doing a great job in meeting what we want as coaches. So the boys are working hard. So we want to play for 80 minutes and make it very difficult for the big unions that come here. Secondly, we want to be more professional as a union. So again, buy-in from the players. We're working hard on looking after ourselves and making the changes that we want as a unit. And then lastly, the challenge of being a smaller union, the finances, etc. But that's not going to be an excuse. We're excited about the challenge ahead, and we want to get people back to Kimberley and make sure that they support us. And when we walk off the field, they know we've done our best.
16 new players. Are you going to blood a lot of youngsters this season? And does that make your job a little bit tougher?
Look, it is tough, but we knew what was happening, and we lost a lot of senior players. But the guys that have come in have been awesome. I'm massively excited for them and the opportunities they get. What makes Griquas very special is players come here. We're a relatively small squad. We're sitting on about 32 players. We'll most probably go up to 34. And guys get opportunity to play here. So, the youngsters from the under-21s, etc., who hold bags and spend 2 or 3 years waiting for their chance, they come down here and they're playing top division Currie Cup rugby. So that's an opportunity for them, and it's something that we've got over a few of the other unions, and I'm looking forward to see what the players can do this season.
And if you had to put your head on a block, what would you regard personally as a success in the new season for Griquas rugby?
Yeah, I think I look at my role and the management's role is players come here to get an opportunity, but my role is I want to see players playing super rugby going forward, and I want to make sure that I help them achieve that. As a team and for the union, I want to be competitive, and I want to cause some upsets like we used to in the old days. And I want to bring a bit, like I said, I want to bring pride back into the Northern Cape, and we hopefully will get some sponsors and get some backing and get the people behind us and fill the stadium again and live the dream.
Peter, you are coach at one of the iconic unions here in South African rugby. We wish you all the best for next season. Thanks for joining us.
Thanks for the opportunity. Much appreciated.
That, of course, is Peter Engeldo. He's the head coach of Griquas, and it's all about bringing the pride back to a union, an iconic union, one of the nicest rugby jerseys also in the country. We're going to take a little break now. No, it's not a sports show today. It was simply a regional focus with sport. Kendall Mahamati is a little bit jealous the fact that I also got to do a little bit of sport today. He's standing by after a short break to bring us the sports news of the day. We'll see you then.
I'm Peter Engeldo. And I'm Production Chetty Miller, SAB Miller, and Hauser-Busch InBev. It's something that I need to learn to say more often.
Will together produce around a third of the world's beer.
It is a mouthful.
Have you ever considered skin bleaching? Nigeria tops the list of African countries with 77% of its women bleaching their skin.
Now I can see that it is not good because it affects my face and some of my body parts.
Thousands of Arab Israelis and Palestinians participated in a big rally.
Flight MH17 was shot down by a Russian-made missile.
How those chips may fall is a prediction best left to the currency of time.
That's Primetime News, Africa Journal, and Your World on SABC News.
Good morning and welcome back. This is now the Sports Bulletin. My name is Kendall Makhamat, the time being 23 minutes before 12. Now, top story in this hour, suspended FIFA President Sepp Blatter and UEFA head Michel Platini have lost their appeals against provisional 90-day bans by FIFA's Ethics Committee. They were suspended last month while FIFA's ethics committee investigated corruption claims against the both of them. The decision is a further blow to Frenchman Platini's hopes of replacing Blatter as president of World Soccer's governing body. The Frenchman was favoured to replace Blatter in the February 26 presidential election. FIFA's electoral committee registration cannot be processed while he is suspended. He'll also not be allowed to campaign or engage in any football-related activities until the suspension is lifted. Platini is taking his appeal to the Court of Arbitration for Sport. Blatter also faces criminal investigation in Switzerland over a 2 million Swiss franc payment from FIFA to Platini. Meanwhile, in a further twist to the ongoing investigation by U.S. authorities, the president of Chile's ANFP, National Football Association, Sergio Jadue, has resigned from his post and gone to the United States to talk with the FBI. South American Soccer Confederation, CONMEBOL, is also reeling from the corruption scandal. Several leading directors were among 14 FIFA officials and sports marketing executives indicted in May by the US FBI into allegations of bribery, money laundering and wire fraud. A majority were from South America. Now, fifth seed Rafael Nadal of Spain has qualified for the semi-finals of the ATP World Tour Finals in London. This follows his straight sets victory over second seed Andy Murray of Britain yesterday and fourth seed Stan Wawrinka of Switzerland's win against the eighth seeded Spaniard David Ferrer. Nadal produced one of his best performances of the year to beat Murray 6-4, 6-1 in 90 minutes. Murray gave Nadal a run for his money in the first set, but lost steam in the second. With 2 wins out of 2, the Spaniard is through to the knockout stage of the tournament, while Murray will have to do battle with Wawrinka for the last remaining place in the group. Earlier, Wawrinka knocked Ferrer out of the tournament with a 7-5, 6-2 victory. And in other sports news, New Zealand rugby captain Richie McCaw has announced his retirement from the game. McCaw, the most capped player and captain in world rugby, made the announcement in Wellington, New Zealand this morning.
McCaw has been described as a legend, one of the best, a true leader. He played a world record 148 tests for his country, winning an astonishing 131 of them. He captained the team a record 110 times and scored 27 test tries. McCaw is also a 3-time winner of the World Player of the Year award. The standout flanker led the All Blacks to several title victories, including 2 World Cup titles, the last of which was against Australia in London last month.
That last game, to have that as the lasting memory of your last time on the pitch, pretty satisfying. And the other thing I'm proud of is I actually played, I think, some of my best rugby in the last couple of weeks. So to finish on that note, I think's pretty good.
The All Blacks praised McCaw's contribution to rugby.
We're very proud of him. He's inspired a lot of rugby players. He's inspired a lot of All Blacks. And we'll miss him for sure, but like everybody, you've got to pick the right time to go, and he couldn't have picked a better time.
McCaw will now continue working with the helicopter company in Christchurch and hopes to get his commercial pilot's license. Liesel's uncle, SABC News.
Now, South Africa has also lost a legendary rugby player. Springbok centre John Gainsford passed away yesterday, aged 77. This following a long battle with cancer. Gainsford established himself as one of the greatest centres of his generation, earning 33 test caps and scoring 8 tries during his Springbok career between 1960 and 1967, playing in 71 Springbok matches in total. Now, here's what the world of rugby, as well as others, had to say about this legend's passing. First up, we've got Jeremy Fredericks. He says, so sad to hear about the legendary John Gainsford. R.I.P., sir. What a great player and gentleman. We've got another one from One World of Sport. 18th of November, sad day for the rugby world with the passing of 2 legends, Jonah Lomu and John Gainsford. Rest in peace to the both of them. And we also have Dominic Ward. He reckons Rob Howing will recall John Gainsford as a regular spectator at school rugby matches in the Cape and in the 70s. A considerable aura that he brought with him while he was sitting in the stands watching schoolboy rugby. And let's see if we've got another tweet or a message. Neil Hatley, so sad to hear of the passing of Villages, Western Province and Box Centre, the legendary John Gainsford. Lucky enough to have known him. Outside break, hashtag outside break there. So, as you can see, quite a lot of people. Anurine Humphreys, rest in peace, Jonah Lomu and John Gainsford. A truly sad day for rugby. Rest in peace to both Jonah and Gainsford. It's been a sad period for South African rugby as well as All Black rugby with the passing of those two legends. Now moving on to other sports stories. Russia set up a committee with the express mission to eradicate corruption in national sports and ensure its athletes get to participate in the Rio 2016 Olympics. This is in response to the ban by the IAAF of its Athletics Federation. The move also comes after the World Anti-Doping Agency, WADA, suspended the country's anti-doping agency, RUSADA, for non-compliance. Former WADA President Dick Pound, who headed the independent commission that wrote the report on Russian doping, said the probe found evidence of bribes to conceal positive tests as well as destruction of samples. The report also says there's evidence that Russian state security services were also involved in the collusion. Pound has said, though, that the way is open for Russia to solve its doping problems ahead of the Rio 2016 Olympic Games. Russia were barred last week by the IAAF and can only return to athletics competition once they've proven that they've set up new framework to stop doping. And that's where we leave it with the sports. We take a quick break. In fact, no, we're not taking a quick break. Have a look at the weather. We'll be back after that. The rain is falling around the country. It's good news. But we're going to end today with a different story. There was high drama at the hearings of the Commission for the Promotion of Cultural, Religious and Linguistic Rights.
This, as Prophet Paseka Motsoneng, also known as Mboro, remained defiant, refusing to answer questions on the finances of his church.
Now, the Commission has summoned church leaders as it investigates what it calls the commercialization of religion and the abuse of people's belief systems.
Members of the Incredible Happenings ministry in support of their spiritual leader. They believe Prophet Paseka Motsoneng is being victimized.
He's doing this because of the authority of the Lord. Hallelujah. Amen.
Amen. At the boardroom, the commission is demanding answers on the finances of the church. It was tense when the coffers issue was raised.
I've answered you. I'm not going to give you the answer that you want. I'm giving you who I am. I've given you who I am.
Can you read?
Kick in. I don't have a problem.
Distracts. We just want to know which bank account keeps the money from tithes, from donations, from the ministry itself. Where does the money go to?
Mboro remained defiant.
The problem here, you're using intimidation. You're using your authority, and we can't speak out. Now, I can't answer. That's why I say, you know, because when I answer, I'm being threatened. So we might as well, as I'm already here, that you do what you plan to do. If I will go out with bail, I will. If there's no bail, I will remain in prison.
We can protect and promote those institutions that operate in the name of public, but they're not able to account. We have the leader of a church before us, who's called upon to account before South Africa.
And after 3 hours of being grilled but not giving the commission answers, Motsoneng was given until Friday to produce financial statements. A few minutes later, a different mood when Grace Bible Church delegation took the stage.
96% of the church's income comes from free will.
They left the commission impressed after laying their financial statements bare. Bishop Musasono says churches should be self-regulated. The hearings will resume next week. SABC News, Johannesburg.
It's an interesting story that we've been looking at for a couple of weeks now. We've extended an invitation to the Prophet Mboro. Hopefully he'll be positive and come back and come and join us to give us his side of the story.
And of course, we also get a feedback from the Commission chairperson on what is happening after, maybe next week or the week thereafter, as soon as they wrap up their situation there. And yes, the invitation is open to Pastor Mboro.
The pastor's always been willing to come onto the show before. I'm sure he will do so again. But today we've had a different day, Kendall. We've asked a question earlier. Your views on this question? Should corporal punishment be brought back into the schools?
Absolutely.
What do you say?
I'm going to answer that, but before that, the love of money, the root of all evil. Now, back to that question that you just asked about corporal punishment, should it be brought back to schools? I think corporal punishment should be brought back under very specific conditions, and if taken away, there should be very specific conditions.
Well, there have been a lot of your views. Let's have a look at what the people are saying, Kendall, because it's not what you say, it's what the people say, my friend.
And what Keith has got to say is that it should be reinstated with a view to build as opposed to breaking a pupil.
That's a very good one there from Keith. Let's see if there's any more comments on that.
Yeah, they've been coming in thick and fast today. We've got a dozen or so comments. Can we have more comments?
There we go.
Well, there we go. Slick says, SABC Newsroom, yes, teachers must be trained on when and how to apply it.
Corporal punishment. Bonge Ndava says, it should come back, but monitored wisely and very closely. Yes, it's a kind of cautious approach that I like. It's not the shoot to kill one this time, Elvis.
And Tulasi's reckons, no, it shouldn't be brought back. No violence. Not interested, Tulasi.
And I'm sure there will be another hashtag that relates to bring back the cane. Hashtag
bring back the cane. Well, there's simply not enough time for us to deal with all the comments on this that's coming. But we appreciate it. Maybe we'll look back tomorrow at some of the ones that we haven't seen. Thank you for joining us. We've run out of time. You've been watching Newsroom. Elvis?
From myself, Elvis Preslin.
Evan Janssen.
Kendall Makamati.
We'll see you tomorrow, bright and early.
Arrivederci.
Arrivederci.
Lecamos.